Good evening and welcome to the Glendale City Council meeting of August the 17th, 2021, being called to order at 6:06. To help slow the transmission of COVID-19 and protect the health and safety of the community, City Council, as well as board and commission meetings, will continue to be closed to the public for in-person attendance. The public is encouraged, though, to watch and participate from the safety of your homes to practice social distancing. The meetings can be viewed on Charter Cable Channel 6 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. It is also streaming in high definition online at glendaleca.gov/live, YouTube, and a free app called ScreenWeave on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices. Choose Glendale TV from the menu. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting these questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person during the Glendale City Council meeting. Thank you. And with that, may we have roll call?
Councilmember Agajanian.
Present.
Brotman.
Here.
Kasakian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
And Mayor Devine.
Here. Thank you. And the flag salute, please. Mr. Agajanian, council member,
Please
would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the
Allegiance
flag
to the flag of the United States of America,
to the
to the
republic
republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
liberty
justice.
and justice for all.
Please remain standing for tonight's invocation. Let us join together to pray for our city. Let us ask for the guidance and wisdom we each seek to make this meeting interactions productive and benefit our wonderful city. We pray for the safety of our community, and we pray for our neighborhoods and schools. We pray for everyone in Haiti who are recovering from the recent earthquake. We pray for all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And what's next, please?
The agenda for the August 17, 2021 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on August 10, 2021 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And for those of you that are listening and are waiting for action item 8C, it is being pulled from tonight's agenda and will be coming back at a later date. Thank you. That's the agenda item on improving quality of life for bus riders by installing shelter and shade structures at our bus stops. So that will be coming back at a later date. What's next, please?
Next would be presentation and appointments. 3A agenda preview of them for the meeting of Tuesday, August 24, 2021 by John Tucktallian.
Good evening, Mayor Devine, members of the City Council. Next week's City Council, City Housing Authority joint meeting will begin in the afternoon at 3 p.m. They'll have two items on that particular agenda. We have a report from Community Development regarding the implementation process of a landlord-tenant ad hoc committee, followed by another report regarding a discussion and direction on consideration of establishing a rental registry for multifamily residential units in Glendale. For the evening, there's quite a number of consent items. At 4A will be a report for Public Works regarding reflective pavement installation project at Lot 2. At 4B is going to be a report from the Fire Department regarding their building consolidation. That'll be followed by a report from Management Services regarding a designation of a voting delegate and alternate for the League of California Cities annual conference. At 4G will be a report from GWP regarding transmission services agreements between the City of LA and the City of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, followed by another report from the Fire Department regarding the state surcharge relating to the Fire Department Certified Unified Program Agency, also known as CUPA. At 4F will be a Public Works report regarding elevator renovations at various facilities. And at 4G would be a report from Community Services and Parks regarding the fiscal year 2021 California Department of Aging and Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act related to our elderly nutrition program. 4H would be a report from Public Works regarding a professional services agreement to support GTV6 technology and space planning projects, followed by a report again from Community Services and Parks regarding appropriation of funds for the annual operation of the Stone Barn Nature Center at Duke Magian Wilderness Park. At 4J will be a report from Public Works regarding maintenance of traffic signals and other traffic-related electrical device contract amendments. And finally, before we run out of the alphabet, at 4K will be a report from Community Development regarding a contract for alfresco dining, design and fabrication of long-term parklets. That takes us into our actual action items. At 8A would be a report from Community Development regarding introduction of an ordinance to revoke and reinstate Title V of the Glendale Municipal Code. That'll be for the purposes of updating business regulations and business license procedures. At 8B will be a report considering updating sign regulations pertaining to animated digital signs throughout the city. At 8C will be a report from City Attorney regarding the adoption of a code of conduct for City Council members and members of the city's boards and commissions. And finally, that evening, the last item will be, again, from the City Attorney's Office related to updates and cleanups to the campaign finance ordinance and proposed matching funds program. That concludes next week's preview.
Thank you very much, and I love your sense of humor. Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is consent items, including minutes. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed.
I would like to move the consent items.
Second.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
There was a second by Councilmember Najarian.
Oh, thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Devine.
Yes, thank you. And what's next?
Next is number 5, City Council and staff comments.
Thank you. Do I have comments from my colleagues? Anyone? Councilmember Brotman?
Yes. 1 second. Last week I mentioned a concern I have about the upcoming expiration of the eviction moratorium, and just wanted to. I don't think I made myself clear, so I just wanted to provide some information, and I have. I think staff is going to also provide a little bit of information to the public, but. We know that there's a robust state program for COVID-related rental assistance, and maybe Aram, could you just put that up? Because I hope you got that. I provided a link, and I think it'd be worthwhile for people to see.
Councilmember Brotman, let me see and try to find it. Give me a second.
Did it go to you?
Yeah, I'm trying to get
If
this
you want, I
up.
can have somebody else speak and we can come back if you need to find it.
No, there it goes. I
I
got it.
did want to, what, you've got it there?
Yeah, I'm moving
Okay.
it now. Can you see
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I'm hoping that renters and landlords out there that have, issues with unpaid rents related to COVID can, apply through this program. It's well funded. And if you could just scroll down, it'll show that it applies to both landlords and renters. Either or both can apply. It covers unpaid rent over certain periods of time. I won't get into details, but you can look at this. It covers utilities as well. And there are some income related qualifications. But it's a pretty robust program and has been funded. I don't remember the number, but it's got quite a large budget behind it. The challenge and the concern I have is that I've read a lot and I've heard about bottlenecks in getting the money dispersed. So a lot of people have applied, but the money is just in the queue. It's a little bit like the problem that we had with the unemployment insurance when the state had this program, but couldn't necessarily get out the money fast enough. And I've also heard some people having challenges completing the application process. So what I wanted to make sure people knew about it. And I wanted us to just make sure we're not caught flat-footed at the end of September, at least understand what our options are. I'm not suggesting we go ahead and extend the moratorium. I think it's way premature to even talk about that, but we should, be looking at it, paying attention to it, because we have 2 weeks that were dark. We come back in September. There's not a lot of time, and we want to be able to help make sure that we don't face any kind of an eviction problem, and hopefully that won't be happening, but I would like us to be prepared. So I did ask staff. John Toktalian had some interesting information that I think he can share with us about some of the applications that he's seen coming through and some of the calls that staff has been getting.
Madam Mayor, members of City Council, actually Peter Zolak is here with
Or
our
Peter?
housing.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll be able to delve into more details as requested.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, Councilmember Brotman. I did check with staff, that'd be the rental rights staff that has been receiving phone calls from tenants and landlords during this whole period of COVID and prior to that when we were implementing the rental rights program. They had told me that over the course of the last 2 months, they've received 465 inquiries to the rental rights hotline, and of that, 30 inquiries were related to COVID evictions. So staff's opinion was that there was not a rising concern of calls being made with regards to the eviction moratorium expiring. Hasn't happened yet, at least. It seems to be at an even pace over the course of the last 2 months. And you did mention that the state program is up and running. The state, as part of its website, well, let me take a step back. The program has been, as you stated, been evolving over time. I think initially the state of California realized that they had a lot of regulations in place that were really slowing things down for applicants. So they revamped the application process. They estimate that they took it down from probably a 3-hour timeline to submit an application down to an hour. And they've eliminated some redundancies that they felt that they had. They also opened up the phone line, and they have the ability to take questions in multiple languages. And they've updated their webpage to be able to display the information in multiple languages. And then they've also increased the number of partners that they've hired to help process these inquiries when people are having trouble and need additional assistance. To date, the city of Glendale has, landlords and tenants have submitted 2,462 applications to the California Rent Relief Program. Total, that's 2,462 applications, total about $33 million in rental claims. To date, they have served 896 households to the tune of about $12 million. So the average assistance to those 896 households so far has been $13,300 per claim. Again, they've stated that they do intend to try and help process these claims faster as their staffing allows. The only other agency ahead of the city of Glendale in terms of the number of claims would be LA County in general. They have over nearly 38,000 claims from landlords and tenants that have been submitted. And then the next highest after Glendale would be the city of Santa Monica. Their claims of about 1,300 claims that have been submitted by their landlords and residents. Just one other bit of information I wanted to say, and it escapes me right now. We do have, I did have reach out to the state as well as the county that's been very closely monitoring the status of the COVID rent relief program. I did ask questions about the ability for a landlord to recoup rent if a tenant has moved out already, and there previously wasn't an ability to do that. There is now. The ruling is that a tenant must be present in the unit at the time an application made by a landlord is received and accepted, then the tenant has the ability to move out of that unit and find something more affordable to them, and the state would honor that claim. But it's important to note that the tenant must still be in place at the unit when that application has been submitted and up until the time that it's accepted. And I don't know if there are any specific questions that I can answer.
No, I mean, for me, I just wanted to thank you for that and just ask that you keep us plugged into any changes if you see those numbers start to move significantly or you're getting, additional phone calls or concerns. I think I just want us to be ahead of the curve.
Yes, and we will do that. And I believe also there are some conditions that landlords must meet before they can evict someone and obtain the summons. And the condition is that a landlord must first demonstrate that they applied through the state of California for the rent relief before being able to get a summons for eviction. So there are some steps that landlords will have to go through prior to filing any evictions if they do after the September 30th deadline.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zoll.
That's it for me.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Robin, for that. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Kasakian.
I just want to wish all of the families well who are having kids return to the schools. I want to wish our school district good luck and thank all of the staff, administrators, and teachers who will be in the classrooms hopefully for this upcoming semester. And it's an exciting time, especially for parents who have had their kids at home and quarantined with them for however many months it's been. Now it seems like forever. So I want to wish them all good luck. I think some of my colleagues and I will be at various campuses to welcome the schools tomorrow, joining our school administrators. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Did I hear someone?
yes.
Mr. Councilmember Agajanian.
Yeah, and that line, I want to add that the state of California allocated $5.2 billion to help the renters and $2 billion also for overdue water and electricity, anyway, for utilities. So far, $1 billion has been spent. So there are lots of people who need the help and they did not apply yet. So I suggest, all the time I speak about this on my TV program almost every other night at least. And, the president also allocated $47 billion to help. So whoever is listening to this, they're watching us, whether council members Brotman or me, they have to apply as soon as possible and get the help before it becomes late and encounter some other problems. Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay.
Madam Mayor,
I'm sorry?
Madam
Councilmember
Mayor,
Najarian?
I said Madam President, I meant Madam Mayor.
Getting me mixed up with the airport authority, are you?
Because you're...
It's okay. It's all right. Councilman Najarian, did you have anything?
Nothing for me. I will waive this portion of my speaking opportunity.
Okay, all right, then, I've been watching TV and the news, and the kids are so excited about going back to school, so tomorrow should be a very exciting day for all of them. I hope they have all that COVID testing organized so that they're not waiting in lines for half the day. But I will be at R.D. White for the opening, and I'm not sure where, Councilmember Kasakian, where will you be?
I'll be at Jefferson.
Jefferson. Anyone else?
I'll be at CV High.
CV High. Okay. Anyone else?
I'll be
All
at,
right. So,
I'll be at Edison Elementary.
okay.
And
All
I'll-
right. Councilman,
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
Agajanian?
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't say anything.
Councilmember, okay, go ahead. Mr. Galanian, did you want to say something?
Yes, I'll be at Valley View Elementary School.
Oh, excellent. Anyone else? And some of our staff will be out and about, won't they?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, okay. Look forward to that tomorrow morning, bright and early. You know, I have been informed that on the topic of the COVID and the Delta variant, that our hospital beds are being taken up by cases of COVID. And some patients in the emergency room are having to wait 8 hours for beds because all the beds are being taken up by patients, which means that this variant and COVID are spreading through our city. And my question to staff is, have we or can we approach the Greater Downtown Business Association and ask them about mandating, as other businesses are doing in the county, that anyone that comes into their business has to have a vaccine or have been tested for COVID? Have we approached them in any way? Because I know that it seems that our attempts, and I don't know how our attempts at getting our residents vaccinated are not panning out as we want them to. And so I'm wondering if perhaps some sort of a working relationship with collaboration with our businesses would be an incentive for our residents to be vaccinated, rather than making it a mandate for the entire city. Because I have been asked about that. Can we mandate that everyone in the city have a vaccination? So have we tried that avenue?
Madam Mayor, members, City Council, I do believe our PIO has made contact with Downtown Glendale Business Association as far as trying to coordinate locations that we can have mobile clinics. And as you know, on August 25th, we will have a mini health fair in collaboration with the Armenian Medical Society. We're hoping, and this will be in front of the Glendale Galleria, where we have the highest foot traffic. We're hoping to draw attention to the free vaccination. We've been pushing it out on social media, and we will reconnect with the association, Downtown Glendale Association, to push out that message. As you mentioned, as far as mandating is concerned, they are not the authority to be able to do that. They can encourage the patrons to these businesses to wear masks or get vaccinated, and we'll provide information regarding that health fair and free vaccination that they can pass out to them.
But they can, as a business owner, say that they are not accepting any clients or diners or shoppers that are not vaccinated, correct?
Correct. As individual business owners, each business owner obviously has that discretion.
Right. But my question is, have we approached the Business Association, Greater Downtown Business Association, to promote that?
Madam Mayor, Mayor, City Council, not in those exact terms, but we will connect with them and see what we can do and what they can do as far as that's concerned, and what help we can provide for them.
Yeah, because I know that we have restaurants that are very busy and have a lot of people, and it would really, I think, be an incentive for a lot of our residents to get their vaccinations if they were not allowed to go to their favorite restaurants. That's my thinking, and I'm just trying to think outside the box, or outside of look at what other cities are doing to try to get our residents vaccinated. Because for someone who needs a bed in the hospital and has to wait for 8 hours because COVID patients are in there that have not been vaccinated, just to me does not seem fair. So that's my message for tonight. Do we have any staff comments other than Mr. Zovac?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And next item, Mr. Jimian.
Next item is community event announcement, 3-minute portion. I do have a caller.
Okay, let's put him through.
Tony Pastorella, you're live. Tony, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman, staff. listen, you know, these kids may be excited to go back to school, but I can tell you for a fact, I've interviewed several kids in passing recently. They are not excited about wearing these masks. They can't breathe. And so that's something that they're not going to be excited about. Number two is you just keep on pushing and pushing and pushing the people. I mean, Mayor Devine, you're borderline bullying the people of Glendale, and I think they're sick and tired of it. At least I am. You know, it's a choice. It's freedom of choice here. You can't keep pushing people like that. They're getting bombarded through TV commercials, through billboards, through signs on the freeway, through social media. I mean, it's everywhere. They don't need you up there and the fire chief up there telling people to go get vaccinated. The ones that wanted did, and the ones that are hesitant, are reluctant, they've made their choice, and there's nothing you're going to do. And as far as mandate, boy, that's a really thin line there. You're skirting there. Boy, people don't like that word mandate, and that's going to get people very, very upset. By the way, these pop-up clinics, this thing you're going to have tomorrow at the Americana, and the failure you had at St. Mary's, and the vax clinic at the college. You know, there's a CVS. People know there's CVS. There's Rite Aid. There's Walgreens. There's these tiny little pharmacies all over the place. People know where to go get the vaccine if they want it. They don't need, you know, all of these little extra things. I mean, what's the purpose? Please answer me the question. Why are you continually pushing this on people? Is it the FEMA money? Is it you're getting pressure from the federal government? I mean, do you have stock in these companies? I mean, please give me an answer. I don't want to get in a dialogue with you. I know that's not the forum here, but give me an answer. Why keep pushing? That's
I'm
all I
trying
have
to
to
save
say.
lives, Mr. Passarella. We are all are. We're trying to save lives. That's the answer to your question. Thank you. Is that the only caller we have?
No, Mayor, I do have, looks like 2 more callers.
Okay, let's hear them.
Mike Mohill, you're live. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mike Mohill. Mayor Devine, when I came before council last week, I misspoke when I stated the city sent to CalPERS $224 million of Measure S money. I should have said $224,000. Mayor Devine, you replied Measure S money was not being used to pay CalPERS. If you recall, Mayor Devine, Measure S was the 2018 0.75% sales tax increase. Measure S money was not to be used for the salaries and retirement pension benefits of our government union workforce. Mayor Devine, can you please ask staff if Measure S money was used this year as well as last year to pay CalPERS? Mayor Devine, this year the city was obligated to send a whopping $95 million to the corrupt and irresponsible CalPERS, but we could only send CalPERS $61 million, which included $224,000 of Measure S money. Additionally, $20 million was transferred from 69 different city accounts to the general fund, including 5 critical major departments: sewer, water, electric, grant funds, and capital projects. Glendale taxpayers are still on the hook for this year's $34 million. Please ask staff, where is the $34 million? Is the $34 million another IOU to CalPERS this year? Plus, we already have an unfunded liability of over $500 million to CalPERS. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Mohill. I can ask Mr. Taktalian if you would address Mr. Mohill's remarks. I know that I said that no funding, none of Measure S funding was going towards pensions. And I will admit to Mr. Mulhill, I was incorrect because to provide the quality of life activities and programs that we have passed in or approved in Measure S funding do and have required staff. And that amounts to a minuscule part of our pension. But can you elaborate even more on that statement?
I'd be happy to, Mayor Devine, members of council. To address the first question that Mr. Mohill did ask, the total amount that was sent to CalPERS in the previous year was $61.4 million. The general fund portion of that, inclusive of any Measure S funding, was about $41.4 million. There is a very small portion of Measure S funding that went to pay for pension contributions in the amount of $224,000. Again, I want to make that comparison: $224,377,000 versus $61.144 million. So you're right; it is a minuscule amount. But the services that we get for that level of funding is nothing but minuscule. Frankly, the type of positions that this went to go fund was strictly for quality of life type programming. The primary example that comes to mind off the top of my head at this moment, it was our conversion of our public pool from a few months a year to a year-round aquatics program. Public pools don't lifeguard themselves. Actual people lifeguard public pools. And those salaries and pension benefits, so to speak, come from the quality of life funds that Measure S was specifically approved by voters for. So I hope that addresses that question.
Thank you. The old adage proves true: never say never. Never say never. Okay, do we have another caller?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay, it's here.
Malcolm Johnson, you're live. You have 3 minutes, Malcolm. Go ahead.
Much, Mayor. I'd like to thank you and the rest of the council for doing what you can on COVID. The only thing I'm really upset about is the fact that people like Tony Passarella are able to call into this service and basically give out COVID misinformation about the community. So I support you. I support any efforts you can to get more people vaccinated and keep people safe. And also, just as a side note, if Mike Moorhill was so upset about money, maybe you'd be turned on the recall campaign. But thank you very much, and keep doing good work. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, that was the last caller. The rest of the callers on my queue right now are for item 8A.
All righty, thank you very much. And what's next, please?
Next would be action items. 8A, Police Department regarding Los Angeles County District Attorney Special Directives and Impacts. 1 motion to note and file report. 2 motion directing staff. Madam Mayor, at this point, I have 7 callers.
Okay, let's hear the report first. Mr. Galanian?
Yes,
So the chief is up there.
Yeah, Mayor Devine, members of City Council, this report is being presented to you in response to Council Member Najarian's request for a report on the LA County District Attorney's special directives and the respective impacts on the operation of our police department. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Povolitis to introduce the item.
Good evening, Mayor Devine, members of council. On December 7th, the District Attorney's Office implemented 9 special directives, though 2 of those have been amended slightly, and council did ask for an assessment of the impacts on the Glendale Police Department and the Glendale community of those directives. And so as we go with that, I'll tell you that we look at that through the lens of a police department that is steeped in the traditions of community policing in terms of engaging with our community and looking to solve problems on a long-term basis. One of those issues is obviously crime, and so we looked at it from a crime perspective because we are dealing with an uptick through June. The first 6 months of the year, we are dealing with a slight uptick in crime. Our Part 1 crimes are up 13%. Of that, our violent crime is actually up about 13%. I'm sorry, our overall crime is up 3%, but our violent crime is up about 13%, primarily driven by robberies. And our property crime is up about 2%, driven by auto theft, which is up about 4%, and that's on top of a huge increase last year of close to 60%. and our grand thefts that are up about 50%. But in addition to looking at it from crime, as I said, the other issues that are important to our community in terms of making sure that we're dealing with issues that involve people's quality of life, and that sometimes deals with things of people who may be drunk in public or trespassing and those types of issues that are important to being able to maintain the community that the Glendale population expects. And so when we looked at those directives, there are really three that are going to, that we think will have the most immediate impact. One is the elimination of the cash bail. The other is the misdemeanor case management directive. And the last is the sentencing enhancement and special allegations. And so I'm going to turn this over to Captain Robert William, who has really done the heavy lifting in terms of doing the research and putting this report together. With the caveat that I'm going to tell you that this has been a challenging time with 2020 with COVID and the courts having been shut down and now working through the backlog. Cases are being set 120 to 180 days out. So some of our information is still preliminary as the courts work their way through that process. But I will tell you that we will share whatever information that we have obtained. And at this point, Captain William, it's yours.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Mayor Devine, members of City Council. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to report back to you on your request to learn more about the Los Angeles County District Attorney's special directives and their impacts to the City of Glendale. You have before you a report which covers this topic in more detail, but in the interest of time, I will keep my presentation to just a few highlights and explain what some of these directives are and what we as a police department have experienced so far. Before I begin, I want to express to this council as well as to the community that this report and presentation is intended to provide you with the best information and data that we have to assist you with your considerations of these policies. It is important to first note that these policies are specific to Los Angeles County. Nothing in the state statute or the state of California's Constitution as it relates to prosecutorial processes have changed at this point. Therefore, the changes that have been imposed by these new policies only impact the County of Los Angeles. And since the City of Glendale is within the jurisdiction of LA County, almost all of our cases are impacted by these policies. The second important note to make in these policies, these policies have been now in effect since December of 2020, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many cases in LA County and across the state have been delayed in the judicial process. And as the courts return to full operation, there's a bit of a catch-up, and many of the cases from 2020 and even some cases from 2019 have not yet made their way through the process. So please keep that in mind as I go through this report. As the Chief mentioned, while there are 9 total special directives, this report will focus on 3 of them as having a potential for an immediate impact to the City of Glendale. Beginning with Special Directive 20-06, the elimination of cash bail. This policy directs deputy district attorneys that, among other things, they shall not request cash bail for any misdemeanor, non-serious felony, or non-violent offenses. Solicitation to commit murder, felony assault likely to cause great bodily injury, felony domestic violence resulting in traumatic condition are some examples of offenses that are neither serious nor violent and qualify for zero cash bail under this policy. If you wish, I can provide you with a longer list of crimes that the state statute classifies as non-serious and non-violent offenses. Coincidentally, during the COVID-19 pandemic, LA County had enacted an emergency $0 bail schedule for misdemeanors, non-violent, and non-serious offenses. This was not the decision made by the district attorney's office, but rather an action that was taken by county officials to reduce the spread of the virus among the inmate population. However, this directive essentially does the same thing for reasons other than the pandemic. What we have experienced so far in the last roughly 18 months of having $0 bail for misdemeanors, non-serious, and non-violent offenses is seeing a large number of individuals who recommit with new offenses while they are not remanded into custody. As of now, here are the following numbers of people who have reoffended in Glendale, and I must tell you that this is updated from the report that you currently have. These are the numbers as of today. So this is, again, just in the city of Glendale. 452 people have reoffended at least 2 times in the last 18 months since the beginning of the $0 bail schedule. 143 people have reoffended 3 times. 60 people have reoffended 4 times, 28 people have reoffended 5 times, and 16 people have reoffended 6 times. And there is a few in here that are with greater numbers, including one with 17 arrests over the last 18 months. The next special directive is 20-07, which is the misdemeanor case management. This policy directs deputy district attorneys to decline or dismiss a specific set of misdemeanor offenses before arraignment and with no conditions unless exceptions or factors for consideration exist. An exception includes a repeat offense in the preceding 24 months. Those specific crimes are trespassing, both residential and business districts, disturbing the peace, driving without a valid license, driving on a suspended license, criminal threats, drug possession, drug paraphernalia possession, minor in possession of alcohol, drinking in public under the influence of controlled substance, public intoxication, loitering, loitering to commit prostitution, and resisting arrest. As you can imagine, these are the types of offenses and public nuisance that we deal with on a daily basis, and some of those also directly impact the quality of life issues for residents and the business community. The police department has a number of resources that we often work through to resolve most incidents without having to resort to an arrest. But when we do make an arrest, it is because we have exhausted other options and an arrest is necessary. Prior to this directive being imposed, it was not uncommon for a deputy district attorney to review a case judiciously and, based on the circumstances available to them, make the discretionary decision to dismiss or decline a case. However, under the blanket policy of this directive, the discretion part is removed and cases are dismissed with limited factors for consideration. In tracking the Glendale Police Department's misdemeanor cases, we found that of the 825 misdemeanor cases that were rejected so far year to date, 90% makes up for this directive being the reason. This was unusually high number of DA rejects with respect to this policy still being in effect. Upon closer examination, we learned that misdemeanor cases that were not specifically listed in this directive were also being dismissed due to this policy. These offenses included vehicle code violations such as misdemeanor reckless driving, misdemeanor speed contest, petty thefts, and vandalism. We contacted the district attorney's office to have a better understanding of why these cases were also being dismissed, and it was explained to us that the second part of Special Directive 20-07 provides that in the event misdemeanor charges are not declined, deputy district attorneys are to follow 3 sequential steps until the charge is dismissed. Those cases were dismissed under the first step of that process, which is pre-arraignment diversion via administrative hearing. Despite these directives, the Glendale Police Department continues to enforce the offenses that are impacted by this directive. However, it is important for council and the community to be aware that the prosecution for these offenses are not being completed from a judicial standpoint. In certain cases, there is no further action beyond the point of arrest. For example, we continue to arrest individuals who are found to be in possession of illegal drugs, and those cases are immediately dismissed based on this directive. There are no exceptions to this. And at this point in time, there are no treatment programs available either at the point of arrest or in lieu of any judicial process. The last special directive I would like to focus on for tonight is 20-08, the elimination of sentencing enhancements and special allegations. Prior to this directive, deputy district attorneys would judiciously review cases and circumstances. In addition to filing the primary offense, they would also file state statutes of sentencing enhancements and special allegations when appropriate. These statutes include any prior strike enhancements, the 3 strikes law, gang enhancements, violation of bail, and the allegation of using a firearm in the commission of a crime. This directive initially prohibited the filing of all sentencing enhancements and special allegations, but it was later amended to permit filing of enhancements for hate crimes, elder abuse, child abuse, human trafficking, and some financial crime enhancements. However, the general prohibition against filing enhancements is now in effect. This means that without the existence of a sentencing enhancements and special allegations, more serious crimes that often come with enhancements will have significantly lower sentences. Additionally, this directive also states, and I quote from the directive, If the charged offense is probation eligible, probation shall be the presumptive offer absent extraordinary circumstances warranting a state prison commitment. If you would like, I can provide you with examples of what types of crimes are probation eligible, but to specifically note some of the most serious ones, murder, carjacking, robberies, and kidnapping are all probation eligible crimes. Finally, this directive states that enhancements and special allegations pertaining to any pending matters shall also be withdrawn. The Glendale Police Department currently has several murder, robbery, kidnapping, and carjacking cases that are all pending, and all of them were initially filed with enhancements and special allegations. As we wait to work through the judicial process, we are waiting to learn the outcome of if and when those charges will be withdrawn. This concludes my brief presentation on this matter, and before I turn it over for any questions that you may have, I would like to take a moment and let this council and the community who's watching to know that under the leadership of Chief Povolitis and the entire Glendale PD management team, the Glendale Police Department will continue to make public safety our top priority. Your Glendale police officers and professional staff continue to proactively serve you each and every day and engage with the community. We strive to send a strong message that criminal activity will not be tolerated in the city of Glendale, but we also strive to resolve issues through a continuum of care approach. They do this every day, they do it fairly, they do it constitutionally, and they do it respectfully. Most importantly, they do it with pride. With that, the chief and I are available to answer any questions and are seeking any direction that council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain William, for this report. I will go to my colleagues for questions. Do we have any phone calls, Mr. Jamian?
Madam Mayor, at this point, we have 10 calls waiting, and we have more coming in.
In the queue?
Madam Mayor, before you go to the phone calls, may I make
Yes.
just a short statement?
Councilmember.
Yes,
Rajari.
thank you, Chief and Captain, for coming before us. I was the one that asked for this to come forward. And if you all remember, I specifically stated this is not an effort to launch or support an impeachment or a recall of the district attorney or an effort to place before the council a resolution of no confidence. I specifically stated that. What I did want was the chief to explain the impact on Glendale's safety by the directives that the district attorney put forward. So I was rather surprised when I started getting emails. Oh, why are you voting to recall Gascon? Why are you planning a resolution of no confidence? So it was clear to me that there was a lot of misinformation out there in the community, a lot of misinformation. And I tried to track it down, and I did find out what was going on. Aram, you have the items? So essentially, these 4 pages are a call to action by several groups. One is the DA Accountability Coalition. Another is WF4BL. I think that's White People for Black Lives. And it totally misstates what this council is doing this evening. It says that we are ready to vote to recall, to support a recall of Gascon, that we're ready to vote for a no confidence. And they even go as far as giving talking points to the individuals. And at the other page, they've got a nice picture of the DA, nice looking guy, talks about his effort to reform criminal law enforcement and criminal prosecution. So let's be clear, and all the folks on the phone, I hope you're listening, because I could only answer so many of those emails. We are not here, and it's not my intention to propose a resolution of no confidence. It's not my intention to bring forth a resolution supporting the recall of District Attorney Gascon. So get that straight. I'm here to address and understand how 3 of these directives one with the 2 amendments, are affecting us in Glendale and see if there's any way we can keep Glendale a safer community. It's not an attack against people of color. It's not a resurrection of the sundowner laws that Glendale once had. It's a discussion on public safety. And if I'm going to be criticized for that, then let that be. But I think that's one of the roles of a council member and a council as a whole, to discuss public safety in a frank and open method with the chief before the community at large. So I'll have other comments in detail, Madam Mayor, but that's just the point I wanted to make.
Thank you, Councilmember Najarian. I hope that the callers are listening and have been listening, and they understand that what we are doing tonight is not a recall of Gascon or anything else. All we're doing is discussing our how his changes have impacted our community. And that's, so I hope that some of them will get that point and maybe not call in and disparage any of us. Any other comments from my fellow council members before we take phone calls?
I have just a few questions.
Councilmember Kazaki.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Thank you for all the good work that our police department does, especially during these difficult times with pandemic and a number of other challenges. I know it has not been simple or easy. When you mentioned about you gave a couple of very troubling figures. One of them was the 452 people who have reoffended, and how many of them have committed a crime a third time, fourth time, fifth time. Would you, Captain, enlighten me as to what the total number during that time that you're taking that 452 figure from? What is the total number of arrests that we're extrapolating that figure for?
I don't have the total number of arrests because that would include the misdemeanor and felony offenses. This particular number is only focusing on misdemeanor cases, and I don't have that number available with me at this time.
Okay. Well, I mean, the timeline and as to where certainly it's troubling. Obviously, the number of repeat offenders, but I think total number also gives us a clearer picture as to what we're dealing with, where we need to allocate more resources, what they are. I think it's the details matter. But you also mentioned a couple of things, and I know that to me it's certainly new. I know that some folks who may be watching and following this may be questioning as well. You mentioned on Special Directive 20-07 on the misdemeanor case management, there's a pre-arraignment hearing and administrative action policy. Can you explain what exactly that is so people can understand it, and so I can understand it as well?
In fact, to make it easier, I'll actually just take it right from the directive because it has a little bit more detail.
And I'm sure that's even written in somewhat legalese. So in language that someone who perhaps did not go to law school and does not have a background in law enforcement may be able to better understand it.
I'll do my best to break it down.
Thank you.
In cases where the misdemeanor charges are not declined, that means the district attorney has decided to file those cases. The deputy district attorneys are to follow 3 sequential steps until the charge is dismissed. And there's 3 of them. The first one is pre-arraignment diversion via administrative hearing. In other words, that's also called office conference. And generally what that is, it's an informal way for the district attorney, in the interest of saving court time, in some cases where the offender, it's their first time committing a criminal act, usually a young adult, for example, and depending on what that charge is, rather than going through the judicial process, they offer an office hearing, and they have conditions to what they have in place. I'm not privy to what those conditions are, but as long as they meet those conditions, then the case will be dismissed. However, if they violate those conditions, then the case will be filed. That's generally what a diversion is. And so there's 3 stages of when that happens. The first one is pre-arraignment, meaning basically right after the arrest. The second one is post-arraignment, and that's upon compliance with the conditions imposed at arraignment or pretrial, the charge shall be dismissed without the entry of a plea. And then the third one is post-arraignment, post-plea diversion. And I apologize, I've never heard of this one, so I'm not really sure what that is in reference to. Again, this is communication from the district attorney to his deputy district attorney. So this is some court language that I'm not aware of, but it's the third process in the 3 steps that's available to
So
them.
is the issue right now that regardless of what a person's past record is or whatever, whenever they're, within this, they're in the system, they've been arrested, that then they go through this administrative process? That's the first and immediate step, or are they not even going through that? What is necessarily happening?
So it's not entirely clear to us exactly what's taking place because, again, that's language outside of the specific crimes. So we're not, what we're seeing, at least what we're experiencing on our part, is the specific crimes that I mentioned that are not listed in this. For example, the reckless driving, the speed contest, petty theft, vandalism. What we're seeing is in almost every arrest post these directives, they're going into an office hearing. So they're either being dismissed right off the bat, they're declined to file, and the district attorney or the deputy district attorney is handling it as a office hearing, or the case is being filed, but it still goes through the office hearing procedure. And then again, that's a procedure that takes place with the district attorney's office, and we don't know what those conditions are.
Okay. Do we know how much of this is a result of perhaps, and I'm just speculating here because I'm trying to figure out, this has been an extraordinarily odd year, this last year. Any of it as a result of COVID perhaps, or the courts themselves? I know that we've been, there's been assertions about our police officers not showing up to hearings and, you know, it's somehow our fault, and then it turns out it's because the courts have not been clearly communicating. How much of this is a result or is linked to perhaps the conditions during this pandemic?
Sure. So just in reading through the directives, there is no mention of the pandemic or COVID-19, and it reads as if it's indefinite. So I'm not really sure if, I don't want to speculate that there's some other means outside of what's written in this directive.
Okay. So it's not clear?
It's not. No.
And then also prior to the DA being elected, there was also the issue of realignment. Was there not, like, this issue of overcrowding in prisons, federal mandate to, alleviate that crowding, which then pushed individuals from the state level to the county level and county level inmates back onto the streets? And that's very simple. It's an oversimplification, but that was also occurring.
Yeah,
was it not?
Without going into too much specific, I'm aware that there's statewide legislation that goes as far back as 10 years of a movement to try to reduce the inmate population. I believe it started with Governor Schwarzenegger's era, and from there on, there's been a series of legislations that have passed in an effort to reduce inmate population, both in the county system as well as the prison system in the state of California.
Okay. Did you want to add to that?
Going back to 2011, we talked about this with council a number of times. You had AB 109 realignment, you had Prop 47, which changed certain felonies into misdemeanors, and then you had Prop 57 that then allowed people to be released from prison early, generally using those same things. But I would say the district attorney's directives are independent of all of those. And so our experience from 2019 through 2020 and into 2021 are based on the directives, and the tracking that we've been doing are especially based on the directives.
Okay. I just want to I understand that, and I also want to make sure that we get a holistic picture of what we're dealing with statewide, regionally, because we've been having conversations in these chambers about the strains on law enforcement to be able to keep this community safe before this DA and the directives, which present new challenges as well. That's all I have for now, Madam Mayor. I don't want to take up all the time, but I'll come back with some other questions.
Thank you. Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that some of these directives prove to be demoralizing to our police department as well as a danger to our community. Am I correct in assuming that?
Again, I will tell you, first I'm going to put this caveat that the men and women out of the Glendale Police Department are working hard every day, and they are continuing to enforce these. But there is discussions that go on amongst the folks that actually do the work of what do we do if, if these cases aren't going to be filed, why do we continue to make these arrests and put ourselves, at risk to do that? But as I said, they continue to do that, and we will continue to enforce the law here.
Yeah, I know, and we just had that incident where you arrested a fellow for carjacking. He was released, and then he went outside the police department and stole another car, correct? Or truck?
That's correct, yes. We had him arrested once and then walked literally out from the jail and got into a car that had his keys in it and took off with it.
Right, and this is kind of what we're facing. Okay, well, I hope that I've given a chance to those that were calling in that they understand now exactly what we're doing, that we're not going to be calling for the head of Gascon, but so let's take the callers. Mr. Jimmy.
Karen Roseberry, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council, and I appreciate the fact that the city council wants to look into ways to make the city of Glendale safer for its residents, for its guests, for its visitors, and for all Angelenos. And appreciate the reports that have been brought forth on this matter to speak to the rises in crime that have been taking place, especially as a result of these directives that, as the mayor just, I think, rightfully spoke, are making Los Angeles a more dangerous place. And we are seeing these repeats in criminal offenses and these spikes in crime. And while I completely understand that tonight the agenda item before the city council is not one of a no confidence vote in DA Gascon, it is something that I hope might be possibly considered at a future and later time, especially as this data is looked into in greater detail, and as there's an opportunity to analyze it further, and as there's an opportunity to see just how dangerous these directives really are, and what the effects are and being had as a result. And so there have been 27 other cities in the county of Los Angeles that have taken this action. And the reason why I do mention the thought of it being something for the city council to consider is because as citizens, we rely on elected officials to be able to speak to other elected officials, sometimes in a more direct manner than a citizen's voice has to an individual who's elected by thousands, and that is elected countywide. But when his peers and when other elected officials speak boldly, and when they rise up and they recognize that this is not about a partisan issue or a political issue. This is about the rule of law. This is about public safety. This is about keeping residents safe. This is about quality of life issues. All of those very same concepts that have been being discussed in a number of other topics and arenas already, then by so doing, those other elected officials recognize that they are going to be held accountable and that there is a check upon them, and that it may even be, from their peers and from other elected officials that recognize in a more closer situation and with a more direct relationship to some of the constituents just how serious their actions are and just how unwanted those actions are, and not at all what was actually the reason for an individual's election or an actual case of issues needing reform. Nothing that's been mentioned in these directives is actually speaking about the reforms upon which Gascon campaigned or was elected. These go far, far outside of the scope of the authority of a district attorney. They go far outside the scope of the rule of law, of the penal code, and as has been addressed by law enforcement and by those in public safety and in the peace officer associations.
Karen, the 3 minutes is up. Karen, your 3 minutes is up.
A greater matter than that. And I thank you very much for your time, and I do hope that will be taken into consideration.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next caller.
Kathleen Caddy, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Kathy Cady, and I'm a retired prosecutor from the District Attorney's Office. I worked out of the Pasadena court, and I was in charge of evaluating and the prosecution of domestic violence, child abuse, sex crimes, stalking, and elder abuse out of Glendale City, and I was always very impressed by your excellent officers and detectives. I'm now providing pro bono representation to crime victims in response to George Gascon's recently enacted blanket policies, which are devastating crime victims and endangering the community. And my office is at the Dordolian Law Group, which is in Glendale. This is not a political issue, it's a public safety issue. His blanket policies violate victims' rights and they re-traumatize victims. Since January, I've provided pro bono representation to over 70 victims. Many of them are murder victims' families. His policies don't allow for the appropriate allegations to be filed, and as you've heard, that affects the bail that is set, which results in dangerous individuals being released from custody. Because some felonies are only violent, as mentioned by your speaker, when there is an enhancement, such as gun use, great bodily injury allegation, or gang allegation filed. His blanket policy of not allowing those allegations to be filed then results in criminals being released from custody and given a probationary sentence when, based on the violence of their crime, they should receive a higher sentence. His policies, of course, are also affecting the misdemeanor crimes, and that affects the quality of life of your constituents. As you've heard, he will not prosecute most misdemeanor crimes, and that results in these criminals being empowered. His policies have resulted in a crime spike in LA County, specifically in violent crimes. He also has a youth justice policy, which wasn't mentioned, but has really been traumatizing to a number of victims. He will never prosecute someone who is under 18 in adult court. The law allows that some juveniles who commit murder or other violent crimes, that they could be prosecuted in adult court, but his policy requires that they only be prosecuted in juvenile court, which means that they can be released by the time they are 25 years old if they have murdered more than one person. Very dangerous, because what happens is that gangs know that. They recruit their 16 and 17-year-old gang members, go out and commit these violent crimes because they know there is little consequence for executing people. The families of these murder victims are devastated by his policies. His policy regarding parole hearings is that prosecutors are no longer allowed to attend parole hearings. That means that victims have to participate on their own and represent themselves. Defendants are represented by a
Kathleen,
attorney.
your 3 minutes is up. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Thank you. Next caller.
Judith Reef, you're live. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead, Judith.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, and thank you, Chief Povolitis and Captain Williams, for your report, and Councilmember Najarian for making clear what the agenda item is that to discuss tonight. The reports from Chief Povolitis and Captain Williams address the prospective effects of DA Gascon's policies. That is, what happens when a crime is committed today, going forward? What happens to the person arrested and possibly charged with a crime, and how those policies affect public safety. But those are only 3 of the directives that DA Gascon issued on the day of his swearing-in ceremony. One policy that Ms. Katie just referred to is his policy with respect to parole hearings. Before his policy, deputy district attorneys attended parole hearings to make sure that the hearing commissioners understood and had a full picture of the inmate when that inmate who was charged with a crime which merited a life in prison sentence was subject to parole. Now, victims have a right to attend these hearings. There are many, I'm sure, citizens of Glendale who are either direct victims or victims next of kin of crimes committed like murder, heinous rape, awful crimes that merited a life sentence. Victims and victims next of kin are now entitled to go to these hearings, but they have no representation at these hearings. There is no one to speak for them to explain to the parole commissioners the effect of these crimes on their lives. Individuals who have committed these life crimes are now eligible for parole, but the victims and victims' next of kin, they don't have an opportunity for parole for the pain caused by these individuals. At the very least, they should have an individual alongside them who can speak for them, who can amplify their voice. And VA Gascon's policies have prohibited deputy district attorneys from having any voice, any appearance. They do not appear at these hearings. So please consider the effects not only prospectively of Gascon's policies, but the after effects to the people of Glendale who have suffered as victims of crime. They need a voice, and DA Gascon has silenced that voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith. Reef, next.
Ingrid Gunnell. Ingrid, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name's Ingrid Gunnell, and I'm a longtime resident of the city of Glendale. I'm calling in tonight opposed to the prior callers. I do appreciate that City Council member Ara Najarian made it very clear that this is not intended to go into a vote of no confidence. I do want to read from page 2 of the report. The Glendale City Council requested additional information and an assessment of the impacts of the directives in the city of Glendale. Other cities have expressed concerns about the impacts of these directives, and some municipalities have taken a formal position of quote unquote no confidence in the current district attorney. So I'm glad to know that this report and this discussion will not lead to that, because both Member Najarian and Mayor Paula Devine said that it won't. But that paragraph could cause someone to think that it might. I understand victims have rights. And one of the main reasons that many people, more than half of the county, voted George Gascon in is because Jackie Lacey failed the victims of police violence, failed those families. Where were those rights? George Gascon ran on a platform, and that is what he won on, and that is what he is implementing. The recall effort of George Gascon began basically the day after he got elected. They had to wait because he had to be in office a specific number of days before they could formally begin the recall effort. So I understand the victims of crime, the victims of violence, and those crimes and the violence perpetrated by sheriffs and police in the LA County system have not been prosecuted under Jackie Lacey. I'm glad George Gascon is in, and I sure hope that Najarian and Devine keep their word and do not proceed to a vote of no confidence in Gascon. The recall effort should not go on, and Glendale should not support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gunnell. Next.
John Mckinney, you have 3 minutes. John McKinney? Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is John McKinney. I'm a 22-year veteran of the District Attorney's Office. I've worked for 4 different DAs. I've never spoken out critically about one of my bosses until Mr. Gascon. I'm speaking out now because I believe Mr. Gascon's policies are not just a bunch of bad ideas, but they are regressive, dangerous, and will negatively impact the quality of life of all of our communities here in Los Angeles County. I read the report prepared by Captain William and found it to be thorough, accurate, and fair in how it explained 3 of the 9 directives issued by Gascon moments after he was sworn in. As I read the report, I couldn't help but notice that there was no mention of a single positive outcome for Glendale. Not one single positive impact for the city of Glendale or the county of Los Angeles. I noted that Gascon's directives will likely increase adult and juvenile crime rates. Gascon's directives will increase victimization, especially for Black and Latinos and at-risk communities. Gascon's directives will lead to an increase in both drug sales, drug use, and drug-related crimes. Gascon's directives will increase drug-related homelessness, which we see exploding all over our county. Gun-related violence is spiking, yet Mr. Gascon is undercharging gun crimes. Homicides are spiking countywide, yet Mr. Gascon is undercharging first-degree murders by not charging special circumstances when appropriate. The DA has yet to show up at a city council meeting discussing his directives. He's not there with you this evening. He's yet to hold a press conference to address his plans for combating gun-related homicides, where over 90% of the victims are Black and Latino, or discuss the increase in racially motivated assaults against members of the Asian community and the Jewish communities. I know that the alarming increase in shootings and murders is not as much of a problem in Glendale as it is in South LA and East LA. But you should consider the hardship of your neighbors as well. What's good for Glendale is good for LA County, and what's good for LA County is good for Glendale. We are all one people. We may live in different cities, but we seek art, entertainment, work all over the county. So although we have these local jurisdictions, we are still one big community. So after digesting the report, I encourage you to take some action to formally voice your concern about the negative impact of the directives on the quality of life of your constituency and the broader community of Los Angeles. And whether that's considering a resolution of no confidence or some other action.
John, your 3 minutes is up. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Next.
Madam Mayor, I have 9 more callers and more calls are coming in. Do you want us to stop taking more calls at this point?
Let's give them 1 minute. Let's give them 1 minute.
Sure. You want us to give one minute to each caller? Is that
Yes,
what?
please.
Sure. Magic Collins, you have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Hello. Can y'all hear me?
Go ahead. We can hear you. You have 1 minute.
All right. So I want to say, first off, former DA had 8 years to implement plans, and she failed. 8 years. Gascon has 8 months, and they've been trying to get him out in the 8 months he's been in. And as far as the data, the Directive 2007 and 2008, this is incomplete data because you don't factor in the 1.5 years of a pandemic that nobody has ever experienced. The courts are backed up. The violence prevention centers, substance abuse centers, schools being closed, after-school programs closed, that has to be part of the data, or else this data is incomplete. So I would say Glendale should not support the recall and actually support Gascon and figure out ways to adjust to make this work. Thank you. No further comments.
Thank you. Next.
Samuel Durdulian, you have 1 minute. Go ahead, sir. Samuel?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Samuel Durdulian. I'm an attorney here in Glendale. I'm also a former prosecutor with LA County DA's office. I spent 13 years in that office. I want to encourage you to also take action, as the other callers have, to maybe consider a no confidence vote in DA Gascon. To answer a question by Councilman Kasakian, none of these directives had anything to do with COVID. DA Gascon actually issued all of these directives on his first day of office before any COVID issues. And we have come to learn now that most of these directives were actually written by public defenders that he has since now brought in as the executive board of the district attorney's office. So now these policies by longtime public defenders are now being drafted for the DA's office. And really quickly, if I should also point out, juvenile justice wasn't mentioned by this report that you have before you. But imagine this. Imagine a school shooting in Glendale. A 17-year-old kills 10 students. You know what he's going to be facing? He's going to be facing camp until he turns 25. And then he's going to be released and be free. That's the policies of DA Gascon, and we should all be frightened by these policies. I would encourage
Samuel,
the council to
your
take
1
some
minute
action.
is up. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you, Samuel. Next caller.
Alan Michnoff. Alan, you're live. Go ahead. Alan, can you hear me? Alan? Alan, can you hear me? Alan Michnoff?
Go on to the next one, please.
Emma Rivas, you're live. Emma Rivas, you have 1 minute.
Yes, hi. I just want to say thank you to the Glendale Police Department for all their hard work. I am a parent to a murdered child. My son was killed by a gang member, and shame on you if you don't support the recall George Gascon. I am actually affected by all this, and you should worry about my child's murderer being released into your neighborhood soon. If those callers that called that don't support the recall, shame on you. You're just as bad as those criminals. Thank you, Mayor. Please consider a no confidence George Gascon.
Thank you. Thank you, Emma. Next caller.
Alan Mischoff, can you hear me? You have 1 minute. Alan? Alan, can you hear me? Alan Mischoff? Alan? Robin Burke, you have 1 minute. Go ahead. Robin?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Robin. We can hear you.
Hi, yes. Thank you earlier for clarifying that this is not a vote against George Gascon. But I would like to go on record stating that I support the reforms of George Gascon. A lot of what I'm hearing the callers discussing is essentially tough on crime. And tough on crime, there's lots of research on it, but it doesn't really increase public safety. A lot of victims of violent crimes overwhelmingly support criminal justice reforms that emphasize rehabilitation, crime prevention, rather than more incarceration. I am also very sympathetic and supporting of victims of crime. But in order to prevent future crimes, we have to rehabilitate individuals so they do not continue to commit crimes. And that is how you essentially address public safety. If you address the individuals by actually rehabilitation, because there's lots of studies that incarceration doesn't even work on rehabilitation.
Thank you, Robin. Your 1 minute is up. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Robin.
Anahit Ajimian. Anahit, you have 1 minute. Go ahead. Anahit, you have 1 minute. Go ahead. Anahit, can you hear us? Anahit, can you hear us?
Go on to the next, please.
Dr. James Thomas, you're live. You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Dr. James Thomas, San Fernando Valley NAACP, and I'm kind of concerned in terms of the way that this public comment has been structured, giving 3 minutes or more to others, but not to those who stand with George Gascon and his reforms. You know, I want to say a couple of things. Number one, I find it very hypocritical that Glendale would be showing some kind of concern for Black and brown communities when, in fact, Glendale has been notoriously historic from a historical perspective in terms of how it has treated Black folks within its area. I'd also like to mention that 31% of anti-Black crime, there's been an increase of 31% in anti-Black crime in Los Angeles County, and that has not been spoken about. I would also like to say that I am a victim of crime. My brother was murdered and my grandfather was lynched. And neither one of those people, neither one of the people responsible for their death were ever convicted. And so this has nothing to do with what the victims want. This has more to do, and I'm saying this as a victim myself. No one could bring my brother and my grandfather back. So no amount of time in prison, no kind of punishment can do that. But what I am saying is that this is about politics. If you want to look at a study, look at the study that says that police, a Yale study that says police only solve 2% of the crime. At the end of the day, without Gascon, there will be crime. With Gascon, there will be crime. If Gascon is responsible for the uptick in crime in Los Angeles, then he must also be responsible for the uptick in crime in cities all over this country. This is how ridiculous this argument
Dr.
is.
Thomas.
And it is about time that someone
Dr. Thomas, you're...
Let him finish. Let him finish.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Next.
Noemi Wilson, you have 1 minute. Noemi Wilson.
Hi, so my name is Naomi Wilson. I am a resident of Glendale. I think it is incredibly wrong that a deputy DA who does not live in Glendale got 3 minutes to speak, and I, as a Glendale resident, only get 1 minute to speak. So that is already a violation of my rights. Second of all, I would like to say that if the Public Defenders Union supports Gascon, we should be listening to them because public defenders are good attorneys who work for the people in our county who need it the most. I am proud to say that I voted for George Gascon. I stand with him. I support his policies for reform. And I also think we need to be very mindful that whenever that cops lie, when policies pass that don't suit them, we've seen it with Prop 47. Cops lie all the time about Prop 47. Prop 47 has been nothing but good. And right now, the cops are lying to us about Gascon. Gascon's policies are good and will lead to a decrease in crime in LA County by offering real rehabilitation. Also realizing that some of the people who are perpetrators of crime are also victims. I will be deeply disappointed in the Glendale City Council if they issue a vote of no confidence. And I'm also disappointed that you are silencing voices like someone who belongs to the NAACP and me as an actual Glendale resident because you're not willing to listen to public comment as part of your job. So I think that we should have nothing to do with the recall and no confidence vote. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you. I just want to let the callers know that we have no idea whether they are going to speak for or against any item that we're talking about. So the reason I cut it down to 1 minute is that we have more on the agenda and we have a lot of callers, and I absolutely want to give everyone a chance to speak tonight. So let's continue.
Alec Derhovanesyan, you have 1 minute. Go ahead, Alec.
Yes, hello. Good evening. Just want to say that I was not born in this country. I'm an immigrant. I'm a legal immigrant, actually. And this black and white thing, my mind cannot comprehend. I was not raised like this. It is new to me. It has gotten to the point that I'm getting sick of it. Actually, to me, people are people. There are good people and there are bad people. I love all good people, and I don't care about the bad ones. That's all. It's very simple to me. So relying on this argument that, police did that, do not politicize this. This is a safety issue. This is people's lives. And that's all I just want to say. Just enough of this. I really can't stand it anymore. So that's all I want to say. And I have to add that I do not agree with D. Gascon's policies. That's all. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Alec, very much. Next.
Jordan Henry, you have 1 minute. Jordan Henry, go ahead. Jordan Henry, you have 1 minute. Go ahead, Jordan. Alan Michnoff, you have 1 minute. Go ahead. Alan Michnoff. Anahit Ajimian, you have 1 minute. Go ahead, Anahit.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to speak on the agenda item, actually. And there are two things that I'd like to say. The statement that the traffic officers are not attending their trial because of the courts has no evidence to back it up. And if it does, what are we doing about it to make sure that our traffic officers are in fact attending? Is the city attorney getting involved? Is the police department getting involved? Is someone getting involved to get to the bottom of this so that these errors, regardless of where they stem from, are addressed and that these trials against some of these people who have horrible violations are addressed?
And the second issue that I'd like to raise is with the matter of these misdemeanors not being tried or not being prosecuted, is the city attorney getting involved or the police department to see if we can downcharge some of these and keep them in Glendale so that these people at least can be somewhat penalized for their behaviors. So instead of, let's say, reckless driving, something else, so they can be penalized and they can be addressed in the infraction traffic court. That way, if they're not addressed and these people don't do what they're supposed to do, their license will be suspended. And that's an incentive for people not to behave in ways that risk public safety.
Thank you, Anahit. Your 1 minute is up. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Back to Jordan.
Camilla Rose Lewis.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 1 minute. Go ahead, Camilla.
Okay, on his first day in office, Gascon announced groundbreaking community-driven reforms. LA voters elected him to enact. Political and law enforcement opponents of Gascon are now interfering with the implementation of these policies that data and research indicate enhanced safety.
Thank you. Next caller.
Jordan Henry, you have 1 minute. Jordan?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. You have 1 minute,
Great.
Jordan.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm a fairly new member, new community member to Glendale. And I just wanted to reiterate that I appreciated the comment that this is a non-political issue. This is about equal protection under the law. We are not talking about special treatment for any class of society based on any demographic immutable characteristics such as race. I really appreciate the people who did call in support of Gascon because they really do believe that this is effective for the community, that this will bear fruit for us. However, I do believe, based on current data and near future data, that this will become negligent for the community and place a huge liability on the police, on the city council members. Please stick to your guns here. We know what's right. We know we need to protect all citizens. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Next. How many more are we looking at, Sir Jimmy?
Madam Mayor, I think Camilla Rose Lewis got cut off, so she's calling back again.
Okay. And after her?
And
How
she
many?
is the last one.
Okay, let's let her finish. Our apologies.
Camilla Rose Lewis, sorry about that. You got cut off. You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Thank you. On his first day in office, I'm obviously just going to repeat my talking points. Gascon announced groundbreaking community-driven reforms. LA voters elected him to enact. Political and law enforcement opponents of Gascon are now interfering with the implementation of these policies that data and research indicate enhance safety. Research shows that the tough on crime policies increase punishment and incarceration at the expense of public safety. Under the prior tough on crime DA, Jackie Lacey, Los Angeles sent more people to state prison per capita than 56 of California's 56 counties, and yet crime increased 25%. Victims of violent crime in LA County overwhelmingly support criminal justice reforms that emphasize rehabilitation and crime prevention rather than incarceration.
Camilla Rose, your 1 minute is up. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, we've had 16 callers at this point. There are no callers at the queue at this time. Do you want us to stop taking any other calls that come in?
Yes, we'll stop and discuss and make a decision on what we're about to do. I have one question for Chief Povolitis or Captain Williams, either one. They keep mentioning rehabilitation. And I thought there was something in the directives where they don't offer, or they don't make mandatory drug abuse support, to rehabilitation. What's the status on that, the rehabilitation part of this?
I can speak on that.
Okay, thank you.
So prior to these directives, there was legislative intents that were made to support drug abuse in the sense that drug abuse was not necessarily seen as something that someone should go to prison for. So Prop 36 provided opportunities for offenders to seek programs and treatment in lieu of being remanded into custody. So essentially, it was basically you either take this treatment program or you will go to jail. There was an incentive not to remain in custody, and it was mandated by the courts. As of today, we're not aware of, or at least I'm not aware of, any programs like that exist. Essentially, what happens is once an individual is arrested for possession of an illegal drug, that case is immediately rejected by the district attorney's office. There is no offers, there is no alternatives at the point of arrest or any point of the process in the judicial system that I'm aware of at this point.
For rehabilitation. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll take comments from my colleagues at this point, and who would like to start? Councilmember Brotman, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have questions first. I might have comments at the end, if it's okay. Start with questions. And there's a lot here to digest. But just starting with the cash bail issue, I know there's a Senate bill, Senate Bill 262, by Hertzberg and Bonta, who's now our Attorney General, that would eliminate cash bail. I understand it passed the Senate by a wide margin. Could you just talk about how that compares to the policy that George Gascon has put into place? In other words, if that were to pass, would that mandate kind of a similar zero cash bail across the entire state, or is it significantly different from what he has put out in his directive?
Mayor Devine, members of council, Councilmember Brotman, the last version of the bill that I had seen is it is a $0 bail, but it does contain a caveat that if somebody commits another crime while out on that $0 bail, then the standard bail schedule applies to that second and subsequent incident.
Okay, and is that not how Gascon's directive would handle it? If somebody is out on a $0 bail and reoffends, there's no reconsideration of that bail requirement?
I believe the current directive as it stands does not talk about first offense, second offense, criminal history, or anything like that. It is simply, it is as stated that a district attorney will not request cash bail on misdemeanor cases or non-serious, non-violent felonies as listed in the penal code.
Okay. And I ask that because there is a kind of a strong sentiment, and I think surveys show that there's majority support in California for bail reform and for, the types of reforms that we're looking at here that would, get rid of the situation we have where somebody with means who may be guilty gets out, whereas somebody who doesn't have the means, who may be innocent, ends up behind bars and loss of income, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that that's a direction that there's strong support for, and I'm not surprised, therefore, that this SB 626 passed the Senate by a very wide margin. I think it was pretty much a party line vote, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, the other thing I wanted to look at, one of the things that kind of concerned me most when I read your report was about street racing and reckless driving, which, as we know, in Glendale is a major problem and a major concern in our community. And the idea that people that are engaged in street racing and reckless driving, you know, who are charged with a misdemeanor can kind of walk away, yet people that are just, you know, maybe speeding or they run a red light and are, you know, charged with an infraction, you know, don't get to walk away. And I kind of wanted to ask, do you have data? Can you tell us, you know, how many arrests have there been since these directives were issued for street racing and reckless driving? How many of those have been outright rejected by the DA's office? And how many have gone into some kind of pre-filing diversion? And then how many have completed that diversion and had their cases dropped? I asked that because I did have a really good conversation with a gentleman I know you know named Jorge Rodriguez, who's the I guess liaison officer for Gascon's office, and who was one of the leaders in Los Angeles Police Department for before he ended his career there. And he was describing this to me and said, if in fact, he said that most cases do go into pre-filing diversion. They always have. And in most cases, people are completing that diversion. If they're not, they're, then maybe they're going to get prosecuted. And he did say to me, if there is a large number of arrests that are being outright rejected by the DA, he would be very happy to sit down and go through that list and look at those cases and why they've been rejected, and partner with us to try to get a handle on this, because he fully understands that this is a major issue in our community, and we just can't have a situation where you are involved in these speed contests and et cetera, and you just walk away. That's unacceptable. I should say he also mentioned that there's a street racing task force, and I was part of this question is asking if you are aware of that and if we are involved with that, because it sounded pretty creative getting undercover officers into some of these groups that are organizing the racing. So I know I've asked you a lot of questions. It's because pedestrian safety and driving is near and dear to all of our hearts. So I think that's an important area.
Let me see if I can do these in reverse order, and then I'm going to turn it over to Captain William to kind of go through some of the data, since he has that at his fingertips. So let me try if I can go this backwards. On the Street Racing Task Force, yes, Glendale Police Department is a signatory to that agreement to assist as needed. It is geared more toward some of the things that, knock on wood, we have not experienced much here in Glendale with some of the what they call sideshows, where people are taking over intersections and much more organized races. We've had a couple attempts at that, which we have been able to quell very early on. But yes, we are part of that task force and a signatory to the MOU between the departments that deal with this. Our experiences with the district attorneys, yes, I do know George Rodriguez. I've known him for a while, and we've had some discussions. But the district attorney's policy on misdemeanor case management still stands, and so those street racing arrests are being moved to either the pre-filing office diversion, or to, if they're filed, they're going through the diversion process. So at the end, it does not have a judicial finding on that. And let me refer over to Captain William, who can give you a little bit more in terms of the data.
Mayor Devine, council members, Councilmember Brotman, in preparation for this report, I realized that traffic safety is one of our top priorities in the city of Glendale. And as such, when I was working on this report, I wanted to spend some time looking into traffic safety issues as it relates to the misdemeanor violations. So in researching it, I went back 3 years just to see what was happening prior in 2019, in 2020, as well as 2021. I can say that looking at the 2019 cases, the majority of those cases, and I believe there was a total of 57 arrests involving reckless and speed contest. And also one thing I may include is that these arrests these numbers don't include juvenile arrests, only because for the purpose of this report, it was very difficult to track juvenile cases based on a separate system that they have from the adults. So this is just a focus on the adults. So again, going back to 2019, we had a total of 57 arrests. And a majority of those cases, even for the first-time offense, the district attorney was filing those cases, and the offenders for them were charged anywhere from probation to a suspension of their driver's license or paying some sort of a fine, or a combination of each one or all three. Moving over to 2020 and 2021, as I mentioned in my report, because of the pandemic and the courts being closed and the citations were being cited out 120 to 180 days out, there's still a significant amount of cases from 2020 and 2021 that have not yet been processed by the district attorney's office. So in 2020, for example, we had 115 arrests, and this was a year that we really stepped up our efforts. Again, a majority of those cases are still pending. Some of them were previously filed prior to 2021. So these were arrests that were made prior to these special directives. And post those directives in 2021, the district attorney went back to some of those cases and changed it from filed to dismissed through the course of an office hearing. And in 2021, almost all of the cases, there's a total of 60 year to date, that are all pending, with the exception of just one case that actually was filed. So I'm not aware of the circumstances of that and how that slipped through the cracks, if you will, to get filed. I don't know if that individual has had many priors and the district attorney felt compelled to file on that individual. But as it stands right now, other than that one case, all of the cases that we're getting have either been pending or they've been dismissed through an office hearing.
Okay. Yeah, and I would just, encourage you. I know you know Jorge or George. I mean, maybe he goes by both. He had very nice things to say about the police department, about you, Carl, and I think it would be good to go through that with him. I want to talk about the drug treatment because there's a program, or there's something called Alternatives to Incarceration. I'm sure you're aware of it, which was actually, I guess, launched before Gascon by the Board of Supervisors. And one of the things I learned was that this is being rolled out to different cities. I don't know where Glendale is on the list, but there is money, I guess, from Measure J, and there are programs that would handle this issue of people that are arrested for possession, that have, addiction problems, to make sure that they are getting into treatment. It's voluntary, but I think, I question whether mandated treatment really works anyway. If somebody's not ready for their treatment, it's probably not going to do much. But are you aware of this this program and when this is coming to Glendale and how we could take advantage of it?
Mayor Devine, members of council, Councilmember Brotman, yes, I'm aware of the program. I do not know when it was going to Glendale. It has just started on their 4 pilot stations, 1 LAPD, 1 sheriff. I believe it's going to be Long Beach and Pomona, and so it has not rolled out anywhere else yet. But if the reading I've done is correct on that, it's also based on the idea that it is a diversion program, that part of the incentive to have that program, or to complete the program, because it will go beyond it, as I understand it, it will actually go beyond just substance abuse types issues, is that if you don't complete the program, that the criminal case is still potentially pending.
Right, okay. Those are my questions. I'll wait till maybe the end and after everybody's asked their questions to give some comments.
Can you wrap it up and give us your comments so we can move on?
Well, you want to get through the other?
Keep it according to, focusing on Gascon and not a lot of other programs. I appreciate your knowledge and your information and your contacts, but let's keep it to this topic tonight on Gascon.
Okay, well, this is all related, but anyway, I guess my broad comments would be, we all want public safety, right? That's not going to be in dispute. I know there's been, a lot of questioning over a long period of time now is whether the incarceration first approach is effective. And I'm not an expert. I'm not going to take a view on whether it is or isn't effective. I know, we have in this country and in this region have high levels of incarceration. And, there's a movement toward looking at alternatives to incarceration, which, the LA County Board of Supervisors study that talks about care first and jails last is reflecting. And I see what Gaston is doing is very much in that spirit. I think he's following something that the Board of Supervisors had launched rather than kind of taking a completely new tack. He ran on these policies. He's implementing these policies. I don't know if they'll work. There's some things I may be skeptical about, but my view is, it's going to take time to know whether this stuff works. I think we have to be patient, and I think we have to work closely with the DA's office and collaborate and make sure that some of these issues that are affecting us, like issues around traffic safety, are addressed. So the question of whether, I know in the report it says something about this will increase recidivism, or it says, I think, let me make sure I get it right, that these changes will increase the probability that our community will be dealing with more criminal activity due to recidivism. I think that's a bold statement, because there's a lot of research that says it's the incarceration that will turn a young person that made a couple mistakes into a hardened criminal, and that will create more recidivism. So whether it does or it doesn't, I don't think we know. I think the old approach has not been working, and I think it is time to give this new approach an opportunity and not second guess it, and let it play out. And it may not work, but we need some time to know that. So that's really where I am on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Who would like to go next? Councilmember Agajanian.
No.
How about you?
No. I don't have anything to add at this moment.
Okay, Councilmember, thank you. Thank you so much. Councilmember Kasakian?
Sure, thank you. I think a number of issues have been conflated here this evening. I can tell you that the criminal justice system in this country is not something anyone who has spoken tonight truly understands as well as we should, particularly individuals who are calling, even some of the folks that were claiming to have decades of experience in it. In fact, one caller claimed that these directives were put in place before COVID, when the DA actually took office in December 7th of 2020, well after COVID was already underway. So I don't know what calendar they're using. The crisis had been well established by that time, and certainly that has had some impact, but that's certainly not entire justification for what we're facing. But our correctional system is broken, and it doesn't work. That much is a fact. Backed up by figures, statistics. You can read them online, you can research it, it's readily available. And our jails and prisons have taken over the place of mental health institutions and care facilities, and our society is beset by a culture that treats our fellow human beings like tissue paper, like they are just numbers, like they're disposable. Just look at the homelessness crisis around this county. Drive around, and it's all of us are to blame for it. I challenge anyone to look at what's happening in our state, in our communities, and to not wish a pox on both houses, whether Democrat or Republican. We imprison more people than any other country on the planet. And if that doesn't concern us as human beings, the callers who are calling, then we have other issues. And so the colors also who are speaking about communities of color being impacted by crime sprees sound a bit hypocritical when we ignore for many years the challenges that communities like our Black brothers and sisters and Latino brothers and sisters have been facing in their neighborhoods, the many challenges they have faced, the institutional discrimination, the racism, the hate, and to hide behind their victimization now sounds a little bit disingenuous. Unless you're someone like Father Greg Boyle, of the Catholic Church. I'm sure some of you are familiar with him, a man who truly will be one day worthy of being granted sainthood by the Vatican, who's truly trying to save lives and reaching out to the most vulnerable. That term of treating people like tissue paper is one that I have borrowed from one of his lectures that he gave here in Glendale of what our failures are as a people. And also one of the callers claimed that, this Gascon's one of the DA's great failures is having public defenders advise him on reforms and policy changes. How is that a bad thing? These are public employees performing their duties in a justice system where people are supposed to have representation, where essentially you're innocent until proven guilty. But let me speak directly about the DA's policies. A DA who's democratically elected by the majority of the voters in the county of Los Angeles. He hasn't been perfect. His policies are causing our communities harm. I mean, take enhancements, for instance. Enhancements are important. When it comes to hate crime enhancements, it matters. Not too long ago, and I'm sure my colleagues may remember, we had an incident where an Armenian school had been broken into and a Turkish flag and hateful graffiti had been painted upon those institutions. And if those individuals who committed those crimes are arrested, they should not be prosecuted for only trespassing or vandalism, because they clearly had another greater terrorist intent that was motivated by hate against a particular group, or whether it's hate against Asians, hate against blacks, hate against any of our minority communities. And so to do away with enhancements, to declaw the prosecution from being able to do their jobs is not right. Under these directives that this DA is pushing forward, someone like, to use a literary figure like Jean Valjean from Les Miserables, does decades in prison because he stole a piece of bread or candlesticks, right? Someone like him will be treated the same way as members of the Manson family, who committed multiple murders, including that of an innocent pregnant woman who pleaded for the life of her unborn child. How is that fair? How is it fair to not allow the members of a family who have lost a child or a victim to not show up and be guided at least by someone from the prosecution during a parole hearing? But unfortunately, this has gotten caught up in this political fervor of the day. I applaud the desire of the DA or anyone really to try and incarcerate less people, but the process has to start much earlier and must be actively pursued in our prisons and jails as we provide opportunities for job training, reform, giving people mental health support, drug addiction treatment, and other support to reintegrate them once into society. But let me say that these policies take away the tools that our law enforcement needs to make sure that our communities are safe, that people feel safe, and that organizations that are multifaceted take advantage, that to fight the organized crime that takes advantage of various communities. I mean, that's not even an issue that has even been spoken about. People are just assuming that all of these are issues related to individuals who commit one crime, but a person's criminal history has to be taken into consideration. Sure, you may get picked up for something that may be a misdemeanor, but what is behind that? If someone has a history of rape and now they're trespassing, it's not just trespassing. There is a public safety crisis, but everyone bears the blame for it, from Sacramento on down. We have drug crisis with fentanyl and other opiates ravaging our communities, and to not prosecute those peddling that to our youth is unacceptable. To ignore criminal actions or to justify because of a lack of prosecution of wrongful, to justify what is being done because, there's been bad actions by police officers against members of our community, against not our community specifically, but unarmed civilians like Fulante Castile, is not right. Two wrongs don't make a right. Just because prosecution wasn't done in one case doesn't mean that we should ignore prosecuting others in another case. I support us as a city having an open line of communication with the DA's office, writing a letter to the DA stating and outlining our concerns, and asking for a response, telling him what our concerns are as an organization, as a body that is tasked with trying to keep our community safe. But I'll tell you what I won't support. I'm not going to support a symbolic, politicized, empty gesture of a vote of no confidence against another democratically elected official. Not at this time. And so that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go, Madam Mayor.
Najarian?
So let's be clear. Let me get back to where I started 2 months ago and where I started 90 minutes ago. This is not a request for a vote of no confidence. This is not a request for a vote to support a recall. So let's get that out of the, let's just get that out of the room, because that is poisoning our discussion. And Ingrid Grinnell, you're going to hold me to my promise? Just stick around, because that's not what this is about. First, out of full disclosure, I worked for 2 years as a non-attorney employee, law clerk with the district attorney's office under Bob Philibosian, both in the Glendale courthouse and downtown. I also have practiced criminal law. So I think I see both sides. I've been a resident of Glendale for over 30 years. I've raised my kids here. Safety is the utmost importance. Safety is something that I've promised to the residents, those who have voted and have not voted for me, and I fully support our police department. Now, we're missing a lot of things here. I just want to go through this. It's been a long meeting so far. We've got a long issue ahead. I just want to try and break this down and make my points clear. Let's start with special directive, no cash bail. I fully support the presumption of innocence for anyone who has been arrested. Let me be clear about that. There are injustices when those people who have been arrested are not able to find the funds for bail, and they are incarcerated in LA County Jail until such time as either the bail is reduced or their case is disposed of. The problem, though, is highlighted by Captain Williams, is what do we do with those folks who get arrested, there's no bail, and they go out and they commit another, they're charged or accused of committing another crime, and they're accused of committing another crime and another crime and another crime. That's a problem. I think that this Senate bill that's coming through gives, if that takes away from the DA the ability to order his deputies to request no bail, in other words, if this is the second offense and it goes to the bail schedule that's out there, I fully support that. Senator Bonta, Attorney General Bonta, Senator Hertzberg, if that's what you're saying, I support that 100%. So I hope that that's the way we're going. Somebody wants a freebie, you know, one free one, you get arrested, no bail, but your second one, if you're arrested, then there's a bail schedule that goes into effect. So I support that. My communication to the DA, and that would be, we wish that there was some amount of cash bail, but if you want to exercise your discretion for the first offense and then follow the mandates of the Senate bill, I'm okay with that. The next thing is the misdemeanor case management. I mean, I'm very concerned that someone can be arrested for trespassing, disturbing the peace, driving without a valid license, driving on a suspended license, making criminal threats, having possession of drugs meaning anything. I mean, it's not marijuana anymore. That was the big, you know, oh, these poor people have marijuana. Now that's legal, but it's fentanyl, it's cocaine, it's heroin, it's opium. I don't think that it's fair for our community to have someone arrested with possession, could be near or without a school. Don't forget, the northern part of our city in the La Crescenta area has a very significant opium problem and heroin problem. Those are our children out there. And if someone's going to get caught once, twice with heroin or opium, I think that person should be charged should be charged. I'm not saying throw him in state prison and leave him there till he's 99 years old, but there's got to be some consequence for that. The current directive has no consequences. There's no mandated, as the mayor inquired, there's no mandated drug diversion program for these people. Their cases are dismissed. That's not fair to anybody. And I would communicate to the district attorney or George, Jorge, whoever that gentleman is, that that's not good for our community. And yes, I know that the district attorney was elected. That's fine. But that doesn't mean we give him a carte blanche to do whatever he wants to do. It's our duty as residents of the county, especially as elected leaders for the third largest city in the county. We're waiting for the next census results, I'm confident, to let him know that we're not happy with this. We're not happy with that. I don't want to say, we hope you're recalled, we hope you whatever, leave office. That's not what it's about. I respect the results of an election, but we can still make comments, I think, and we owe that. This whole list that the captain went through, this pre-arraignment diversion, the post-arraignment with pre-plea diversion, this is just ways that the cases fall out and there's no charges at all brought on people. I don't think that's fair. I think we need to let the district attorney know that we want some consequence. Please put them in if they're drug addicted and they have a history of drug use, I want these people to be arrested. I want them to have a term of the term of their parole or term of their probation to go and take these drug diversion classes and then come back, show the judge, yes, judge, I attended, and then let the judge in his wisdom dismiss the case. But we don't have that now. These people are getting arrested, we're booking them, we're bringing them in, and the case is gone right after that. Now, as far as traffic safety, last week we were all very, very soberly remorseful for the accident that happened in Burbank, where there was a street race and three innocent people died. Who's to say that that person, the criminals, the criminal racers, had they been arrested 2 weeks before for a similar street race, they would have had repercussions on them. They wouldn't have just been booked and dropped out. I'm not saying that would have solved that accident, but think of it in a larger scale. People that are racing, speeding, reckless driving, they need to be held accountable. That's something this city talks about almost more than anything else. Shouldn't we tell the DA that this is a huge concern of ours, that we want consequences for people that are driving without a license, suspended license, reckless driving, all that? I mean, this is what we need to let the DA know. These are serious issues for us. As far as the enhancements, Councilmember Kasakian talked about that. There are some circumstances when enhancements are very, very important. The three-strike law, the statistics show that once that was initiated, that LA's murder rate dropped from 30 people per 100,000 down to 5 per 100,000. A lot of that, of course, there's no solid evidence as to what caused that, but I think a lot of experts are saying, well, it was part of this three strikes. People knew that, if you take that extra step, you're going to have a lengthy incarceration. Not to mention all the crimes that have currently happened in Glendale that are susceptible and would be otherwise qualified for special circumstances and enhanced sentencing. The murder of the Glendale woman who was followed home, robbed, shot, and killed in her garage by 3 gang members. Under these directives, you can't say they were gang members. You can't say that they followed her home. And it goes on and on. So this is what I think we should do. I agree with the direction that Councilmember Kasakian is going. Let's communicate our dissatisfaction with these directives, give him particular instances on why it's not good for our city, urge him to reconsider them and to consider a revision or amendment, like he did with the other ones about the enhancements for human sex trafficking, child physical abuse, child and adult sexual abuse. He changed his policy and his directive. So he heard. This has worked before. He has heard from the people, and he's amended it to be more in line with what the community wanted. So let's express these to the DA by way of a letter from the mayor, and whoever else wants to sign it, and let's move forward. By all means, let's work with him. This isn't recall George Gascon. This is not what it is. Let's not turn it into that. This isn't, a racial thing. We want a safe community, as Councilmember Brotman said. We all want a safe city. So I think this would be a great step towards working with the DA to increase the effectiveness of the police and get a safer community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Ms. Devine.
Thank you, Councilmember
Devine.
Najarian. So I'm the last to speak.
Ms. Devine, before, briefly, I want to say.
Councilmember Agajanian.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Already my colleagues, they spoke a lot about this issue. I just want to, probably the only businessman here that in the past, of course, I suffered a lot through the criminals, thieves, and they damaged the business in the past and recently. I just want to say, I don't want to see that the district attorney to become so lenient and let everybody, every criminal on every issue, to be so lenient that create a situation that our police officer or any other group of police officers, whether it's this LA County sheriffs or Glendale Police Department, I don't want to see that the situation that they say, so disappointed. I'm sure they're going to do their job, but to be so disappointed that they will think that what they are doing will not make any difference. They will grab this thief or whoever, and they present a case to district attorney, which I had such a situation during my business, and then district attorney will not follow and let the person go. So they would see that their effort is totally wasted. So they will be so disappointed, they may come to, some of them, they might come to conclusion, why to go through all this hassle? I don't want to see that situation. This is my concern, actually, that our police officers, City Council of Glendale, obviously, Glendale police officers, I don't want to see disappointed one after another. They arrest somebody and tomorrow they let them go or even do not follow the rules and regulation which is in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Agajanian. Well, I think, so I'm the last to speak, I think. I think my colleagues have pretty well covered every issue and every directive that Gascon has brought about. And so in short, I just like to say that there's a lot that we feel and we know that is questionable about these directives. As I asked previously, it has to be demoralizing to our police department to make all of these arrests and then see these perpetrators just walk out of the jail and do it again and again and again and again, and in many cases more than just again and again. And to see that there's no accountability, no rehabilitation, that's worrisome to me as well. I think it's time that we formally voice our concerns on the impacts that we are experiencing, that our police department is experiencing, that our residents can be experiencing. Granted, we don't know if all of these directives are going to be successful, but for now, what we are seeing is not acceptable. It's not acceptable because of the impacts that they have on our residents and the impacts that they have on our police department and our quality of life. And I think that's why we have to take a stand. I think the first speaker, the very first speaker that we had tonight said it correctly. And she said that the most impact is when elected officials speak to other elected officials. And I think that's what we need to do. And I'm encouraged when I hear Councilmember Najarian say that Gascon has made changes when people have voiced their opinion. So I think it's time that we voice our concerns for our residents and our police department and encourage amendments that we think would be fair and move forward with that. And I would be happy as the mayor to sign a letter to that effect. And I would also include my colleagues on that letter as well. So if there is I know we're charged with a response. We may provide direction to staff, and I believe that sounds like the direction that at least 4 of us have taken, is to for staff to compose a letter, work with our police department. Of course, be encouraging that we are willing to work with the district attorney and his policies, but there are some concerns that we have in our city. And with that concludes my comments.
Do we need a motion for that,
So,
Mr. City Attorney?
Mr. Garcia, what is our next step here?
Or will that come back?
Has staff gotten direction?
Madam Mayor, I would direct that, I would suggest that the council put together a motion directing the staff to put together the letter to District Attorney Gascon asking for reconsideration. That's what I heard you say, asking for reconsideration of these directives, and then staff can prepare that and then bring it back to you, or it can be signed by the mayor, depending on how you want to frame the motion, Councilman Najarian.
Unless, of course, Mr. Garcia, you want to take on all these misdemeanor cases in the city. I'm kidding. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Let's make that motion, Madam Mayor, and that is to direct staff to prepare a letter reflecting our concerns, specific concerns on the three policy directives presented to us, and make that available for you to sign and any other council member that feels that they would like to add.
I'll second that, and if you would also accept that he be open, or his staff be open to meeting with our staff.
That we
A request for their staff to meet with city staff? Yeah. Okay.
I will accept that as a friend.
And we want to work together.
Yeah, then I'll second that. Thank you.
All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian?
Yes.
Brotman?
Yes.
Kasakian?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
And Mayor Devine?
Yes. Thank you all. Next item, please.
Next item is 8B, City Attorney regarding discussion of council districts and directly elected mayor. Motion directing staff on next step for consideration of transitioning to council districts and the directly elected mayor. Motion, note, and file.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Galanian.
Yes, Mayor, Devine, members, City Council, to embark on a completely different landscape and topic, but nonetheless very intriguing. I'm going to turn it over to our City Attorney, Mike Garcia, to present this report regarding council districts and directly elected mayor in response to Councilmember Kasakian's inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Galanian and Madam Mayor, members of council. I will speak with my mask on, but if it's difficult for you to hear, please let me know. So as noted by Mr. Galanian, the council requested a report on the requirements and having the discussion to transition to city council districts, as well as a directly elected mayor. So just to provide a little bit of historical context, as you know, the city charter requires that the city council members be elected at large, meaning that all the voters, all the registered voters are entitled to vote, can vote for council members, and those seats are staggered, 2 in 1 year and 3 in the other, and that the mayor is a council member who is appointed by his or her colleagues. We've had some prior history in Glendale with districts. In 2015, Glendale Community College transitioned to trustee areas. Also in 2015, a ballot measure was submitted to the voters by the council at the time to seek to amend the charter to allow the cities to transition to districts, and that ballot measure did not succeed. Subsequent to that, the Glendale Unified School District also approved trustee areas, and in 2017, both Glendale Unified School District and GCC held their first election with trustee areas. Next slide, please. It's not working for me. So just to provide a little bit of sampling performed by the City Manager's Office, Innovation Office, as we noted in the report, there has been some movement or significant movement transitioning from at-large districts or at-large elections to district elections. Total, just looking at the 74 most populous cities, ranging from 96,000 all the way to the largest city in the state of California, 58 of the 74 cities have districts, and 16 are at large. And then with respect to the elected or appointed mayor, there are 53 cities that have a directly elected mayor and 21 that have an appointed mayor, like Glendale. In most jurisdictions, the position of a directly elected mayor, as opposed to a strong mayor form of government, the directly elected mayor is a member of the council, the full rights and duties of a council member, meaning they sit on the council and they vote and participate in council discussions, but they have additional duties, such as being the official spokesperson and signing certain contracts. For general law cities, that is actually spelled out in the general law. Next slide. We talked a little bit in the report about some of the pros and cons of districts versus at-large. I won't go into them in detail. I think that's really a policy and philosophical discussion for the council. But as we discussed, obviously probably the primary reason that folks support council districts is that each area of the city will be represented by a member who lives in that area and is affected by the issues in that area. Other reasons include having council districts in many cases reduces the cost to run because there are less voters that you have to outreach to and less other costs associated with elections. With respect to some of the cons or the reasons that some suggest to stay with at-large elections is that there can be with council districts a sometimes parochial viewpoint or a viewpoint focused only on the district and less on citywide issues, as well as the potential for there to be disputes or fights over resources, which resources go to which districts. And again, we have no opinion on this. This is just some of the reasons for and against transitioning to districts. So can you go back to the next the prior slide? So, no, not that one, the next one. Thank you. So we noted in the report, because the city's a charter city, we've tried previously to amend our charter to go to districts, and that measure didn't pass. However, there is a method, we believe, that if the council were inclined to want to transition to districts, to 5 council districts, there's new authority under the government code recently enacted after we took the prior charter amendment, government code section 34886, which would, we believe, allow a city, even a charter city, to transition to districts without going back to the voters and seeking a charter amendment. If you were to do that, if the council was to do that, we would suggest at a later time to go back to the voters and clean up the charter to be consistent with a revised practice. But again, it's not something that you would necessarily be required to do prior to transitioning. With respect to having a directly elected mayor along with district council district seats, it's our opinion that there is some possibility to transition to 4 council districts and a directly elected mayor under the same government code provision, which also specifically references having districts and elected mayor. And then with respect to an expanded council, whether it's 5 districts, 6 districts, 7 districts with a directly elected mayor, we do believe a charter amendment would be required to do that because of the fact that there are many other provisions with which the charter, having more council seats would conflict with the charter, primarily being, excuse me, there are in some circumstances 3 votes make up a quorum of the council. That's in the charter. 3 affirmative votes to take certain actions is also in the charter. So those provisions would conflict with an expanded city council. And then again, I want to note that it isn't 100% clear on whether the city would have the authority to go to 4 council districts and then directly elected mayor. And if that's something the council wants us to explore, we will explore that further. Next slide, please. So if there are obviously some benefits if the council wanted to transition to council districts and doing so with the charter amendment, including ensuring consistency with the charter provisions we just talked about, being able to specifically set forth the duties of the mayor in the charter if you wanted to go to a directly elected mayor system. And then I'll discuss a little bit later, there's some flexibility on the substantive criteria for creating districts, which a charter city can enact in its charter if it so chooses. Next slide. Thank you. Just a few comments about the districting process. So there's a couple steps that require just by the law, the legal requirements, and some that are required just would be necessary for good outreach and good governance. Obviously, the first step is the city would need to retain a demographer who can look at the city's census and election data and draft districts that comply with the different laws applicable to districting. There's a requirement for numerous public hearings as part of a districting process, at least 4 are required, 2 that have to occur before the drafting of any maps, and then the additional 2 that occur after. There's going to need to be an extensive public outreach process, whichever process you do, whether it's through the charter amendment process. And again, when I say charter amendment, the process would have to be amend the charter and then draw up the districts if the voters were to approve the charter amendment. And with respect to that outreach, there's so many. When we've looked at what some of the other cities have done with respect to the public outreach, and it's extensive, usually utilization of a dedicated web page, use of social media, public workshops, utilization of these map drawing tools that allow residents to prepare or comment on draft maps so that they can be that public input can be received by the decision makers. And then there is the option to submit a district plan to voters. That was what was contemplated in the prior charter amendment. I would just note that there are some issues with that, some challenges with that, primarily being if you go through this entire public outreach process, this public hearing process, notice, you go through that process, you come up with districts that you think are fair, and they go to the voters and it doesn't pass. I think that's an expensive effort to put at risk. The process that's embedded in the statutes is intended to get that public input, that extensive public input, before the council can make any decisions. In terms of some of the substantive requirements, the next slide. Obviously, we've noticed in the report, obviously we have to comply with the Constitution, the Voting Rights Act, the Federal Voting Rights Act. Each district has to be roughly equal in population. Next slide, please. After we took our charter amendment to the voters in 2015, there were some additional requirements passed by the legislature under what's called the Fair Maps Act. The districts have to be geographically contiguous. You have to respect local neighborhoods, meaning to the extent feasible, the city would have to try to preserve particular neighborhoods that have a designation, Northwest, Adams Hill, that sort of thing. You have to make that effort to preserve those in a single district. Have districts demarcated with specific boundaries, with identifiable boundaries, major streets, that sort of thing. To the extent feasible, districts have to be geographically compact. So this is obviously gerrymandering is permitted under United States Supreme Court precedent, but this law requires that there be some effort to create these districts as compact as possible. And then under the Fair Maps Act, districts cannot favor or discriminate against political parties. And then again, as I noted, if the city adopted a charter provision, it could set forth different criteria than these criteria in the Fair Maps Act. Of course, they'd have to still comply with the constitutional and federal voting rights laws, but some of these could be modified if that's something that the council and ultimately the voters wanted to change. I'm happy to discuss the process for if the council were if the city were to make the transition to council districts, what the order of election would be. I can get into that, but there are very few limitations on what those are, but I can discuss if that's something the council wants to inquire about. Next slide, please. So this report was really just to give you the background, the lay of the land, and really for the council to have a discussion on: do you want to go to districts? Do you want to start that discussion of do you want to go to districts? Which district concepts do you want to explore? Whether it's just the 5 districts, do you want districts and directly elected mayor? Do you want to expand the size of the council? Do you want to do this through a charter amendment, or would you like to utilize the procedure in the government code that I cited? Do you want to direct staff to pursue or to look at and present information to the council on other election models, such as ranked choice voting? Would you like the city to conduct additional public outreach before giving staff direction on would you like to inquire of the public before making this providing any initial direction on whether or not to go to districts? Would you like to direct the staff to start at least an RFP process for a demographer? Obviously, before any decision like that would be made, we need further along, but would you like us to explore that? I do know that because we're in the redistricting process right now, the demographers are very, very busy, but I've been assured by our outside election consultant and legal team that it's still something we could procure, and certainly because of the fact that our districting would occur after the current redistricting process is happening. And then if the council gives us direction to follow up on some of these steps, the next time we come back to you, we would provide a little bit more detail on what the next steps would be required, as well as the timeline to implement a transition to district elections, whether it be by charter amendment or through the government code procedure. I didn't want to get too much into detail in terms of what that timeline looks like until you've had a chance to discuss this and provide some basic feedback on these matters. That's the extent of the discussion, our presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia, very much.
I have a
Mr.
question.
Jimian, do we have a lot of calls?
Mayor, at this time, I only have 3 callers.
Okay, so let's give them a chance to phone in if they would like. So let's take questions, please, from the council members. Questions, anyone?
Yes,
Mr.
I have a
Sopkin?
question, Madam.
Councilmember Agajanian.
My question is, United States Supreme Court just recently said gerrymandering is okay, but you are saying now that is not possible in here.
Gerrymandering, but creating districts that maybe not be compact, but comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. That what the Supreme Court said simply is that gerrymandering for political purposes, as long as there's no discrimination against a protected class, does not violate the United States Constitution. Now, what the California legislature has done and said, notwithstanding any federal law, we as a state are going to require some level of continuity with districts, some level of compactness that you wouldn't necessarily would in some cases gerrymandering would violate these provisions of the Fair Maps Act.
I'm trying to understand. So some gerrymandering is possible to do.
It depends on what the intent of the drawing of the borders is. If it's to consolidate partisan.
Is that it, Mr. Agajanian?
Is your mic on? Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
The intent of it is if you're drawing a district, Councilmember Agajanian, to have Republicans or Democratic seats preserved, Supreme Court said that's allowable. If it eliminates the voice or minimizes the voice of a particular protected group, that's illegal.
That's correct.
Yeah, but still gerrymandering is possible. I mean, it shouldn't be certain group of people. I mean, we have, Armenians. We have Democrats and Republicans. So still,
right.
If you do the gerrymandering, comes to the same solution. And they say, we did not do this because of this reason. We did it because we wanted Democrat Armenians or Republican Armenians to be in the same group.
I guess you're highlighting one of the important points usually in these debates is nobody really admits to gerrymandering. But the point here is that what's in the state law in terms of the districts having to be contiguous and compact, that's not a requirement of federal law. So if we were just following federal law, as long as any district plan did not discriminate against a protected class, that would be allowable. But under state law, it might not be.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Councilman Brotman.
Yeah, could you, Mike, could you go through this, the sequence for districting? Because I'm not clear on why we would hire a demographer first and go through identifying the actual district maps before we take it to the voters, or would we take it to the voters first and then do that? I didn't quite catch that.
Right. I was only suggesting to start the process of procuring a demographer, just because it may take a while to get someone on board. But if the council wanted to do this via charter amendment, we could hold off on that, certainly. And probably, you're right, it's advisable probably to do so. I was only suggesting if the council wanted to move at a quicker pace and wanted to utilize the procedure in the government code, it could do so. And if it wanted to do so, then it would be advisable at least to start that process. But again, as we noted in the report, whether we did the government code process or we amended the charter, we would not be able to make this transition before, certainly not for the 2022 election. It would be, the earliest would be the 2024 election. So yeah, there's no hurry to, I was just saying, if you want to start the process earlier, it would make sense to have us get a demographer board. And I'm not suggesting at all to start any substantive process regarding the drawing of maps or having any of these public hearings before the charter amendment, if that's the direction that the council wants to go.
Okay, and then in the event we did go to a charter amendment, what time frame do you think would be realistic for us to do that? What would be the earliest time we would be able to present that to the voters?
I think we could do it for the 2022 election. We'd have to have everything ready by, I think, January to put it on the ballot. The council will have to vote on it no later than January. I forget the exact date. But yeah, we could do that and present some charter language, present some options, and between now and January, and then you could put that to the voters for them to consider.
Okay, so we could have it on the ballot for 2022, and then it would be, assuming it passes, it would be then effective at the next election.
Correct. I mean, that would be a feasible time frame.
Got it.
Please, excuse me, Madam
Okay, any
President.
other questions? Councilmember Agajanian.
Yeah.
Hear your voice.
First, don't we want to ask the public if they want to go through this?
That's a question for the council, and I would assume so. And the question is, how do you ask the public? Do you want to do it through public outreach and public workshops, or do you want to do it with that process as well as through a charter amendment? And when you go to the charter amendment, you are asking the residents, do you want to go to districts? That is the benefit. That's the ultimate way to ask your residents, is to ask whether they want to amend the charter.
No, what I was saying, first to ask, before we do any charter amendment or any other things, first we have to go to the voters to ask if they want to change whatever they have now. That's the first question.
Correct.
If they want to change this, the 5 districts.
And that's what that was the question that I was posing to you. Do you want to do it that way? Do you want to ask the voters via charter amendment whether they want to transition to council districts, or do you want to utilize the procedure in the government code to start that process?
Okay.
Anyone
thanks.
else? Then we'll go to the phones. Okay, Mr. Jimian, let's do the phones.
Naomi Wilson, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, so my name is Naomi Wilson. I am a Glendale resident. I have lived in Glendale for just almost 2 years. I moved here from Pasadena, which is can you still hear me?
Yes.
So Pasadena is a considerably smaller city than Glendale, but they have council districts and an elected mayor. And so if I had a concern, the only council member that I needed to contact was the one for my district, and he only had to respond to emails from people from his district, and so he's very responsive. The reason why I bring this up is because since Glendale is at large, technically all 5 city council members represent me, and yet the only one who consistently responds to my emails is Councilmember Brotman. And that's concerning because you all represent me, and yet you feel like it's okay to disregard emails from your constituents. I'd also like to point out that you do have an email filter on your city email that reports every email from outside the org as potential phishing, so that's something that you should address. But I emailed all of my council members today and heard from only 3 of them after pointing out that they don't respond to emails. It is your responsibility as an elected official to reply to your constituents. If we had council districts, you would have fewer constituent emails to receive. Also, I am a renter. Most people in Glendale are renters. There is not a single renter represented on city council. You are all homeowners. Many of you are landlords, and most of you are neighbors. I don't think that's representative of the diversity of Glendale. I also think that moving to districts would give us the opportunity to make city council in Glendale a full-time job with an actual real salary that's a living wage. That way you might actually respond to your emails. But it's just part of like a refusal to move to districts just shows how little respect you have for the people that you're supposed to represent. It's hard for me to feel like you care about me when none of you live anywhere near me. You don't know what issues there are in my neighborhood. And what's more, you don't care because you don't respond to your emails. I think that if you had districts, it would make your jobs a lot easier because you would, and then also we'd also have more representation. There are pockets of Glendale where there are very few people who speak English, and those people could be represented by someone who speaks their language rather than having 5 at-large representatives, not all of whom speak languages like Russian or Armenian or Spanish. But I think that this is a no-brainer. There are tons of cities that are smaller than Glendale that have districts, and it's also just like our city council is like a dinosaur. We can't make any progress if
Thank you, Ms.
don't,
Wilson.
if you're
Your
out of
3
touch
minutes
with
is
the
up.
people that you represent.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. I'm just checking my emails, and I see that you did email me today, and I did respond. So sorry that you feel that way. So, and of course, we've been in council all day, so some of us that might have gotten your emails after some of our meetings started may not have had an opportunity yet. So I'm sure you'll be hearing from most of us after this. Next caller, please.
She has emailed, excuse me,
Yes,
Madam
Councilmember Agajanian.
She has emailed at 2:46, and we were already here with briefings and other stuff, talking to the city council members, so.
That's true.
Anyway,
That's
thank
true.
you.
Yeah. Yes, okay. Thank you, Ms. Wilson and Councilmember Agajanian. Next caller, please.
Mike Mohill, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, council members, for bringing this up. I'd like to thank council members for bringing this up. It's been a long time in the asking. And again, I want to thank you. The one thing before I start making a comment, if I may, is that unfortunately the audio and the video tonight goes on and off. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about council districts or the district attorney or anything else. What's happening is that it's being cut out. I've notified the city clerk on this issue, and they can't help me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. So just for technical information, this has to stop. It's we're doing these Zoom meetings. It's very unprofessional. Having said that, let me start with what I want to say about the council district. Again, I want to thank Councilman Kasakian, Brotman, and Mayor Devine for wanting to bring this forward. By having council districts, we will have a more representative form of government. 7 to 9 districts would be ideal because 5 districts is great if we only had 100,000 people. But the city of Glendale has over 200,000 residents, and we're still growing. And each area of the city has their own unique issues. A council candidate would become more familiar with their constituents. How can presently 5 council members know what's going on in the city of Glendale when they campaign? They relied on lots of money to get out campaign mailers. Well, by having smaller districts, it wouldn't cost so much money for an average person to want to run. Right now, you need, listen, Mr. Brotman raised, like I understand, $95,000. Who has $95,000? Special interest there. Smaller interest, geographic area is ideal. Again, and a candidate can walk the districts. Small districts, a person with less money can campaign easier. Council districts, a person would be more at arm with his constituents. And of course, having a mayor elected by everybody. By having a mayor elected by everyone in the city, he would be the unifying voice on council. Yes, having council districts, each representative would be interested in his own interest, and that's the way we have that even in the United States Senate. We have that at the state level. We can have that here, and again, the mayor would be elected by all Glendale residents and not by rotation. And finally, I think we should also bring up having an elected city attorney. It's about time the city attorney represents Glendale voters and not you. Going back on that, I want to say that City Attorney Mike Garcia, I'd like to thank you and congratulate you on a good job in your department for bringing this subject up and presenting it to the council and the people. Unfortunately, if you're watching this on TV tonight, it
Mike, thank you. Your 3 minutes is up, Mike.
Disgusting. It's terrible.
Mr. Mohel, the 3 minutes is up.
Something technical is going on with GTV.
Thank you, Mr. Mohel.
Or is it
Thank
spectrum?
you.
I don't know. Thank you for listening to me, and good evening. Good night.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Next caller.
Kate Unger, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, Kate.
Hello, thank you, Mayor Devine, council members, and staff. Kate Unger, and I have been a resident I've lost track. Glendale has outgrown its small-town suburb background, and 5 part-time council members can't effectively lead this metropolitan city. It's one of the largest in the LA basin, and the current system puts up roadblocks for many people to serve if they need to work full-time, which means that a large part of the community lacks representation by council members who reflect their diversity and have experienced similar obstacles and issues as them. So that's one of the reasons I support a system with a full-time council with a livable salary. I also support district-elected council members, and I'm undecided about some at-large council members. It's been a pleasure to get to know you all, and I would miss the opportunity to speak with more than one council member, so that's a consideration. An elected mayor is also a good idea. And I also believe that each council member should have dedicated staff to support them. Los Angeles City Council members have, 20 staff members each. Glendale City Council members need some support that's dedicated to help them. And I hope that you'll add that to your consideration of this issue. I also believe that a charter amendment is appropriate, especially given that the government code option limits the alternatives, and I don't think that 5 council members is sufficient. I also think that public input and the public will are important, and if you have to do a charter amendment anyway for a cleanup purpose, then it just doesn't make sense to not do a charter amendment from the get-go. And I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Next caller, please.
Karen Kwok, you have 3 minutes. Karen?
Hi, this is Karen Kwok. I've lived in many different cities across this country, and Glendale is the first city I've lived in that does not have council districts. So the question is not, should we form council districts? The question is, why don't we have council districts? So in talking about council districts for many years, I've come across several different arguments. One is that it will create conflict between districts. Well, I hate to break it to you, but conflicts already exist by geographic area because people who live in different areas have different issues. That should actually be obvious to everyone. And I'm also going to point out that whether we have a district or at-large system, that last time I checked, we still need a majority of votes in order to get legislation passed. So that would put it in everyone's best interest to actually work cooperatively with other council members to get legislation passed, as opposed to starting fights in between districts and taking a provocative view of anything. I'm also going to point out that that once people are term limited out of running for city council, that they can run for either an at-large seat or an elected mayor position. Because, and that would also encourage council members to work cooperatively with council members in other districts, because, they can still aspire to the mayor position that represents the entire city. And honestly, under an at-large system, one argument I've heard for it is that, well, if you don't like the council member representing your district, that you have others to go to. Well, actually, under the current system, none of you represent me. Because I find that on most issues, 100% of you ignore me. And under a district system, even if I did not personally like the individual whose job it was to represent me, he would at least be required to be responsible for his district. So this is actually not about individuals, this is about systemic change. And finally, my test of any policy is who benefits. And let's judge by the results, shall we? Who benefits under an at-large system? That would be homeowners who live in 91208, because people in my area are not represented at all. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Karen. Next caller.
Tressa, I don't have your last name. Tressa, you have 3 minutes.
Hi. Good evening. Hello.
Yes, go ahead, Tressa.
Yeah, good evening, Mrs. Mayor and council members. I thank all the callers previously. They talk about very important points and facts why we need to have these council members by district. We don't have representation. The people that we are minority, Korean, some of the Latinos, the Black community that is growing. We don't have representation in that seat, council members meetings. And also, we need more females sitting as a council member. So I support all these change, and we need to put more effort and become true, not to stay in papers. I know that this request about district, it was from a long time ago, but we didn't pay enough attention. So try to fix as soon as possible, and because every single district areas has different issues that it haven't not addressed this so far. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Tressa. Next caller.
Adrian Griffin, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Griffin. I am from Montrose, and I've lived in the city of Glendale for 6 years. But prior to that, I've lived in other cities in Los Angeles. And I do feel that having districts is much more representative of the individual areas and their character, and it will represent me in a more equitable way. I don't feel heard coming from the 91020 zip code. And especially as a renter from that zip code. I feel that oftentimes my conversations brushed off. A perfect example of that is that I've been upset about the number of trees that have been cut down in the city over the course of the last 6 years since I've moved here, and I've expressed that to council members. And until the arborists actually came and explained that, yes, in fact, 10% of the trees are gone. No one believed me. I was literally talked over by this council member. So, there are times when the things that we have to say may seem very small, like a tree being cut down, but they're very important for the whole community all around. And that's what equity is all about, to be able to hear all different kinds of people and their points of view. And then to have districts would allow a little bit more voice for that point of view. And I think that it's worthwhile. I like the idea of at-large. I would like to see 2 at-large elected officials as well, because I think that it gives some continuity, and it would give a place for you to go after serving your term as an elected official for a district. And in addition to that, I really like the idea of having an executive branch with the mayor. But since it's possible to just simply remain at 5 and not go on a vote, I'm great with that too. I mean, that could really resolve all of the problems and avoid a lawsuit, because we know that this guy Kevin has been going up and down California suing different cities who are not having district-wide representation in order to get district representation. So let's avoid that lawsuit. We don't need to be paying for that. We can take care of it our way, ourselves, and let you be the ones to figure out how to do it for us. And then we'll be in compliance, and everything will be awesome without spending that kind of money. So what we want is equity and
Thank you, Ms.
representation.
Griffin. Your 3 minutes is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Linda Newmeyer. Linda, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hello. Thank you, Mayor Devine and council members, for taking my call. I agree with the callers that have come before me in terms of recommending that we go to districts, and I'll restate a couple of the reasons. The first is that certain areas of the city are really overrepresented, while many areas are completely underrepresented in city council. 3 of the 5 current council members live in a single zip code, while most zip codes have 0 council members. This is undemocratic, especially because 67% of the city's residents are renters who live in South Glendale. So it is important to have renters represented on the council, I believe. If I had a representative in my area, I would be able to talk to them about bus lines and trees being cut down, and they would be more likely to pay attention to me, I believe. Finally, I want to say, and there are many other reasons, but time doesn't permit it, I want to say that Glendale is too large a city to be served by a part-time council. We deserve a full-time council. Paying our council members a salary of $20,000 virtually guarantees that only people who are independently wealthy can serve on the council. Council members should be given a salary that matches the median household in Glendale, which is currently $59,000. So, so some amount of decent pay should be given council members for the good work that they do. And I will end my comments there. Thank you.
Next caller.
Madam Mayor, that is all the callers I have at this point. I'm
okay,
expecting
great.
more calls probably to come in. I'm thinking more calls might come in. Would you want me to take the calls that come in, or do you want me to stop?
Let's see what happens. Let's go to council for comments and suggestions, and we'll see how we're doing in about 20 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay? All righty. So let's start with council comments. Who would like to begin? Mr. Kasakian, this was your suggestion.
Thank you.
Would you like to comment?
Sure, Mayor. I want to, first of all, thank this council for taking a number of bold steps in recent years. I know I wasn't a part of this council. I was sitting in Mr. Ajemian's chair when the individual sitting up here decided to put to the voters the issue of term limits, changing a structure and a way of doing business in this city or serving on this council that had been in place for a very, very long time. And it was a difficult decision, I'm sure, because it limited the authority and power of individuals up here to get things done. Yet it was an important one, and one I supported. I voted for it because it helps, I believe, churn the democracy up here, bring fresh blood, fresh ideas, and helps bring new voices to the decision-making process. A lot of comments have been made tonight about what system people prefer. I, by the way, want to thank everyone who's written in. I'm sorry if I haven't written back to you. I really haven't had the chance to go through all the emails, and I commend my colleagues who have. Kudos to them. But ultimately, I think that we have to understand clearly what we want. Individuals who are advocating, let's say, for a strong executive or whatever else may not quite have the full grasp and understanding of how the city manager system of government works, including those who are advocating for staff for individual council members. Certainly it would be appreciated. I'd respond to my emails probably faster, or someone who worked under me would. But under our system of governance, the city manager council model, I don't know if it makes sense to have a strong third executive or second executive body. But we do need more representation. We do need more diversity. And I think one of the ways to achieve that is districts. And I have certainly my ideas. I've advocated for a hybrid model like other cities have, like Seattle has a district model combined with at-large council seats. Others' ideas could be to increase. Ultimately, I'd like to see more council seats, and I would like to see this process be done in a transparent way. And unlike efforts in the past where a charter amendment was put forth and not much else was done about it, I think that we need to do a robust outreach effort, get opinions, put up some options, and then put something to the voters to adopt, saying this is how we envision our city being run for the next 100, however many years. And the points have been well made and well received that other cities like Pasadena next to us, that has a much smaller population than us, has council districts, more council members than we do, and they function just fine, as do many other cities. It would be great to see a diverse group of voices geographically, based on gender, ethnicity, whatever the case may be up here. I've mentioned I like the hybrid model. I think if we had 5 council districts and we had a council member that ran at large in each cycle, it would give individuals who may have issues with the balkanization or that their council member may not hear them, their district council person, it'll give them 2 other council members to possibly appeal to, and in every cycle, or every cycle, whether it's the 3 council districts or the 2 council districts, everyone would get to vote for 2 people. And then among them, there could be a rotation for a mayor. Alternately, another idea is to have 6 council seats, 6 council districts, and 1 elected mayor, who would be just an additional council member, except for the fact that I believe the mayor should run in that model every 2 years, not once every 4 years. And the reason for that is the council dais usually is sort of the farm system for a seat like the mayorship, as we've seen in other cities. And having a council member run in a cycle that they're not running for reelection, and gives them an advantage over the others that would have to give up their seat to run for the mayorship, as has been seen in other cities. In Santa Ana, the mayor is a 2-year seat. And I think that's a fair and equitable way, and it holds the mayor more accountable because they have to stand behind their votes and decisions every 2 years to all of the residents of the city versus the council members who represent districts. So those are a couple of the suggestions I have. I would like to see an outreach effort. I'm optimistic that if we can get it on the ballot for June 2022, that means having everything done by January. That would be great, but I think that's somewhat optimistic given everything that we're dealing with, and for us to do adequate outreach. However, if that's something that staff feels that can be done, I would support it. I would be excited about it. And as been mentioned, this is something that I have raised, and I'm very excited about. I think that it will be something that everyone in the city will appreciate. We've seen it work with our school district and our college district, and I think its time has come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilmember Kasakian. Who would like to go next? Councilmember Brotman? I think you're on mute.
You're on mute, Councilmember Brotman.
You're on mute.
Mute.
Oh, I keep unmuting and then I'm being muted again. Okay. You can hear me now, I hope.
Yes.
We can.
Yeah, so I think there's no perfect solution here. I think whatever we do, there will always be people that find that they are not represented or they're not heard. And anything we do is somewhat of a shot in the dark because it's really hard to know what the unintended consequences will be. Having said that, I think on balance, the time has come for us to move to a district model. I think whether it will change anything in terms of ethnic or racial or gender diversity, I don't know. I hope so. But I think it will certainly change geographical diversity. And I'm certain it will lower the barrier to entry for potential candidates because it will be a lot less expensive to run a campaign. So for that reason alone, probably, I think it's merited that we go ahead with this. I also like the idea of a hybrid system. The 5 districts plus 2 at large makes sense to me, and maybe those 2 rotate the mayorship. So every 2 years, the one that was just recently elected is mayor, and then for the next 2 years, it's the next one that's recently elected or something like that. Those details obviously can be worked out. I would like us to look at the issue of a livable wage for council members, because I think that as much as, or maybe more than the issue of being at large is a barrier for people to take on this task. So I think that's important to look at, as well as considering voting alternatives like ranked choice voting. I think that should be part of the mix as well. And let me just check whether I had anything else on my list. No, I think I touched on everything. So that's where I stand. Thank you. And now you're on mute, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Najarian. Are you on mute as well?
Yep. No, I'm on now.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I really want to go with this. I do think that the system we've currently had, that we're currently operating under, is working. For those who say the South Glendale has been underrepresented, Gus Gomez ran. He was a qualified candidate, and he was elected. For those in Montrose, 9, 10, 20, John Draymond represented you for a while. You voted for him. He was elected. He later did not succeed at re-election and had some other issues. But there has been a representative from that area. You didn't need a district to elect John Draymond. You didn't need a district to elect Gus Gomez. In Mike Mohill's area, we've had several candidates. Mike Mohill, I won't say where you live, Mike, but you live in one of the canyons to the east of the city. Numerous candidates ran and were successful. Bob Yusefian, Dave Weaver, Rafi Manoukian. They did not need a district. They were qualified candidates. They ran. They were elected. Northwest Glendale, Zari Sinanian. He didn't need a district to get elected. He ran, he was qualified, and he won. Of course, there's the hot spot of council members. They
recently,
they call the state of Ohio the birthplace of presidents. The 91208, as of only recently, has had 3 members, although where 2 of us live fairly close. Mr. Kasakian, living on the western area of Glendale, southwestern area, did not need a district to get elected. He was a qualified candidate and he was elected. So I'm not sure when people say, oh, well, I can't get someone elected and we need a district to get people elected. Show me a district and I'll show you a candidate that has been elected from that district in recent history. So I'm not sure what this is all, what the problem is. Let me tell you about our neighboring city. Because I have recent firsthand knowledge of what it means to have districts and a council member representing that district. If you want a land use issue to be advanced, there is one person only that you have to speak to, and it's not the mayor, it's not the head of the community development department, it's not the city manager, it's the councilman in that district. What he says goes. Staff will not make a recommendation for or against until staff, citywide staff, gets the approval from that council member. That council member has turned into a king in that district. If you don't believe me, send me a private email and I'll tell you who it was and when it was. God forbid you want to appeal a decision by any one of the boards or hearing officers. It goes to a board of appeals, board of zoning appeals, let's call it, composed of members from all over the city. In Pasadena, there's 7 districts? I think there were maybe 4 particular district appointees. The mayor had an appointee and an at-large appointee. Everyone who was asked about that says, this isn't in my district. I'm going to do what that council member says to do in that district. That's not a democracy, folks. That's not a democracy. Maybe on its face, that's the way it is. You say, well, he's representing our district. But you don't want one person controlling everything in that district. Look to the city of Los Angeles. You can't even go as an elected official in someone else's district and have a public event without getting approval from that district council person. God forbid you want to go there and collect money and have a fundraiser for any sort of charity or political event. There is no way you go to that person's district unless you have a tacit approval by the council member or his staff. This is what they call balkanization. You might as well slice up Glendale into 5 separate cities, because that's really what happens. I've seen it. I've been there. It's frustrating. It's confusing. It's as inequitable as it can be. You're going to have 5 little kings in the city of Glendale. And if someone from Mr. Kasakian's district wants to call me up on an issue, oh, I have a lot of speeding on Glen Oaks, and that building they want to build is too close to my property line, forget about it. I'm not going to step into Mr. Kasakian's district. The same way I wouldn't want him to step into my district. And that's the way the city breaks up. That's the way it breaks up. And that's wrong. In our current system, it's a great system of checks and balances. If you get one council member that's got a crazy idea, or two that have crazy ideas, they want to build a 50-foot building, 50-story building in their district, the other three can say, oh, no, we're going to outvote that. We don't like that design. We want the bike lane here. We want the school to be located here. We want this power system to be taken care of. That's the way it is now. That's a check and a balance. An aggrieved resident can call each and every one of us, and we respond when we have some quicker than others, but each and every one of us can weigh in on that and offer help, advice, counsel, and solutions to that resident. You cannot do that in a district. Don't kid yourselves. And God forbid you get stuck with that one council member in your district that you don't see eye to eye with, or that you disagree with. How is your life going to be? You have no recourse. No recourse. It's totally unfair, and it breaks it up. Look at the city of LA. I'm not just making this stuff up, folks. Do you think that Joe Buscaino gets involved in Paul Krikorian's district? He did. And they had a protest, and they hit him over the head with a sign just a few days ago. So that's the kind of stuff that happens. I think our system works pretty good. I mean, there are some changes that I would recommend. I think this ranked voting has some merit to it, as opposed to a primary system. I think, and there's different ways of doing it. A resident said, you know what, there's a system where you can vote for as many of the candidates you want on the ballot, and we just count up the votes at the end. So you don't only have to vote for 3. You can vote for 10 if there's 10 candidates, or 9, or 8, or 7, the ones that you like. And at the end, we add it up, and the top winner gets in there. So that's another version of the ranked voting, or the instant runoff, or there's different ways of doing that. I believe that would require a charter amendment to do that. So, maybe I'm being a little bit too fearful of this, but it's what I've seen very recently, and it just shocked me. And it wasn't the big city LA. I knew that was going on in the big city LA for a long time. But in smaller cities smaller than Glendale, it goes on, and it's just extremely frustrating, shocking, eye-opening, and I would hate for Glendale to turn into a city with 5 sub-cities run by 5 little kings or queens. Sorry, Ms. Devine. I don't know, that's just my thought. I'm trying not to be over-dramatic about it, but it was really a frustrating event, and I thought about it, and that's what it is. In the end, however, I really want to do what the residents want to do. I know we did throw this out to them 5-6 years ago. They turned it down. Would they come back again for it? I don't know. Those are my thoughts on this matter. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Agajanian.
For one, somebody told me all the Armenians are getting elected. I just want to say there's no Hispanic representation now. I want to say Frank Quintero, he has been a friend of mine. He has been sitting somewhere here. Gus Gomez being on the dais. And I forgot last year when I was the mayor, we were asked police officer who was mayor and city council.
Rick Reyes.
Rick Reyes.
And Carl Raggio.
And Carl Raggio. There has been representation from different ethnic groups. Some they are newcomers, like Armenians, they were newcomers until 1980s, when 84, when first time Zarian got elected. Armenians, they did not have any representation in here. But after a while, they get more numbers, they start learning how city system works, how the regulations are, and they become candidates and they get elected. Like others, they told me, Koreans, they don't have representation. So they're basically newcomers in Glendale. I'm sure at the later years, they will have representation here. I don't want to talk about one way or another, but the most important thing that crosses my mind is that first, we have to ask the general public if they want to have these districts. I mean, why I have to decide? Or when I was getting elected, nobody told me that you're going to go there and decide how cities should be represented. They elected me for some other stuff, but not to decide for them how this should be decided, you know? So in my opinion, first we have to ask the public if whether or not they want to have districts. And that's where I stand on this issue. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Agajanian. So, a couple of comments. I don't. Mr. Mulhill says that I was one that brought this up, and I'm not quite sure I am. I don't know that I've ever been in favor of districts because of the idea of creating these fiefdoms where you have one council member sticking up for his or her district. And then, of course, there is a possibility of bartering. If I do this for you, then you do this for me. Or if you fix my potholes, I'll fix your potholes. And I don't really think that's a good way of government. I just feel like we're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. I think that we have a council right now that responds to our residents, that answers emails. I hear Councilmember Brotman bringing up different items, and I'm talking about the indigenous trees and cutting down because I'm getting emails about the trees. You know, one of the things about running for election on council, two things: funding and getting to know the different areas of the city. When you run for city council, you don't necessarily have to have the most money. I didn't have the most money. I was down in the list of funding. There were other council members and ones that were elected and not elected that had more money than I did. The money is not that relevant. So to say that, you know, you're going to need less money and therefore we'll get more, it's not necessarily true. Number two, getting to know these areas. When you run for this office, one of the processes that you go through is the meet and greet process. And in that process, you go, and I think every council member that sits on this dais has done this. You go to every single area. You go north, south, east, west, southeast, southwest, every area. And that's what you do. That's what we did. And you can ask any of the council members. We go and we meet the people. We hear, we listen to their voices. That's why we're here, because we want to hear everyone's voice, everyone. And the other way that we get to know our constituents and get to know the neighborhoods is by walking. All of us have walked. I remember there was one person that came in this last election when I ran, and who ran with me, Kasakian and Brotman, and she raised like $500. But I saw her, when I was walking the districts, the areas, I saw her across the street, knocking on doors. And that's how you get elected. That's how you get votes. So to say that, if we have districts, you're not going to need as much money. Well, that's probably true because it's just an area. But you don't, even if you're running at large, it's not all about the funding, folks. It's not all about the funding. Our Councilmember Kasakian said something about GUSD and GCC. This has worked for them. Well, has it? Do they have more diversity on their council? On their boards? I don't think so. They may be representing different areas, but the diversity was the reason for the lawsuit. That's why our city was not dragged into a lawsuit, because we showed we have had diversity. We have had Latinos, Hispanics on our city council. We have Armenians on our council. We have non-Armenians on our council, etc. So as far as the diversity factor, I don't see that really worked for GCC or GUSD. What else do I have down here? Not familiar. Less funding. Oh, and about the, if we have districts, we should increase the salaries. Why would we do that? When if you have a district, you have like 1/5, let's say we have 5 districts, you have 1/5 of the area and the population, the residents to deal with. We are making it just fine on what we're making. And I think personally, I feel like I have a good relationship with those people, the residents that live in this city. Here's another, I got a really interesting email today with a lot of reasons why we shouldn't do this. And one of them was that if you have districts, one person might win with 5,000 votes. And that one person is going to be voting on a citywide billion-dollar project. So you're saying, so you have to think about this, and you're all saying, well, they will represent their districts. Well, we represent the city, and we all weigh in on these huge items. And if you will have, one person with 5,000 votes voting on a huge, that may only be interested in their district, and yet you have them voting on this big project or a huge funding project. The other thing is, did we ever think that maybe the reason that we don't have a lot of candidates from elected from south of the 134 freeway is there's voter apathy and inferior candidates? I mean, if they put up a good candidate, if there's a good Hispanic candidate, and we might have one in the next election, we just might have one, the voters will vote for the best candidate. I don't think our voters vote for ethnicity. They vote for the best candidate. So I think that if the Hispanic community has a good candidate, like a Frank Quintero, a Gus Gomez, a Rick Reyes, you name them, they can win. They will be here. But to do that there is no guarantee if we put a district in South Glendale that it's going to have a Hispanic representative. There's no guarantee of that. It didn't work for GUSD and it didn't work for GCC. So I just feel like we're just kind of looking at something that I think what we have now is working. I had one person write in, you mentioned being democratic. And she wrote that she finds council districts less democratic because she prefers to vote for all of the council members, all of the representatives, not just one. And I agree with her. I think she's right. If I was voting, I would want to vote for 3. If there were 3 seats, I want to vote for 3. I don't want to vote. And plus the fact, if you have districts and you don't, I think Councilman Najarian said, well, what if you don't get along with your council member? Well, he or she is there for 4 years. And if you don't like them, they're there for 4 years. So there's another kind of issue that might come up. So for all of these reasons, I'm really not in favor of districting or an elected mayor, either one. I think we have a great system. I think we all get letters, emails from our constituents saying, you are doing a great job. How many of us do not get those emails? I think we all do, because I think all 5 of us are dedicated to this entire community and to every resident in this community, not just my neighbor and not the one that lives 3 blocks away. But I am dedicated to every single one of the over 20,000 and 200,000 that live in this city. And those are my final words on this. And I will await to hear what my colleagues have to say about the action that they want to take on
Madam
this.
Mayor,
Yes,
if you
Councilmember
let
Untitled.
me add something Ms. Karen Kwok said a little bit earlier, I want to answer that. She said that nobody got in touch with her apparently by emailing and writing, but she was with a few other ladies. They were in touch with me yesterday, and almost like 6 weeks ago, I met them also in here. I mean, saying that nobody answers or nobody pays attention is kind of a...
How quickly they forget.
I mean, just, I'm saying this happened yesterday even. I mean, before, as I said, I was here, I met them, although this place was closed, but they came up here and we met, and I met them yesterday too, through, of course, Zoom, but anyway. And that's what I want.
And you know, the other thing is that sometimes, and I think people have to understand this, that we don't always answer our emails the very minute we get them. You know, we think about them, we ask questions about them, we check our schedules about them. I know I owe an email to someone for a meeting, but you know, it's not like it's instantaneous. And they have to be a little patient, but I don't think that having districts and 1 council member is going to solve that problem. I don't think it's going to solve that problem at all. So I'm waiting for some sort of a direction from my colleagues on this matter. So you know where I stand. I'm against it. And yes, Councilmember Kazaki.
Thanks. I wish I could sit down and talk to each of my colleagues individually and convince them of the merits of this. And unfortunately, that's not allowable due to the Brown Act. So I have to use this forum to do that. So I apologize if I sound long-winded or if I go on a little bit longer than I think anyone has the appetite to hear, given the hour and the previous discussion. But
So does that mean you're going to keep it brief?
I'm going to say what needs to be said and what I feel needs to be said at the moment. Thank you. I think that, you know, as to the comment about a minority vote cast to elect an individual who then makes decisions for the greater population, that system currently exists and has existed since our founders created this country. That's how our Congress makes decisions. Our congressman is elected by the individuals in this district, and then he, along with his colleagues, make decisions that impact this entire country. That's the principle of democracy. That's what makes our country great, that we may get elected by a certain collective, but then we act in a way that represents everyone. So I don't know if that necessarily holds any merit, although I appreciate the individual who raises that concern and anyone who actually voices a concern and has an opinion on this issue. You know, there's the merits and demerits of the districts aside. The reason I've brought this up is because we see obviously in the report and what we're seeing across the state is a trend of going towards districts that are oftentimes imposed. And certainly this council dodged a bullet once, but I don't know if that would happen again in the future. And at least by us making a collective decision here, whether you agree with it 100% or not, at least you'll be able to control your own destiny. You'll be able to put together a system that's far better than anything that the California Voting Rights Act is demanding of us, because I do believe that the California Voting Rights Act, although well-intentioned, is a flawed piece of legislation. You know, there may not be diversity in some areas, in some ways, depending on how you define diversity. But Madam Mayor, when you say that the College Board and the School Board don't have diversity, they certainly have more women on their bodies than we have here. Isn't that one type of diversity? They certainly have geographic diversity because they're representing different parts of the city and where those individuals live. So, I mean, I look at, every time I walk through City Hall and I look at that gallery of just old, Anglo-Saxon white individuals, males, it doesn't sit well with me. And I would love to see more diversity on that wall, but that has to start from somewhere, and expanding the council and changing the way we do things, and having a model that encourages people to run and makes it easier for them to run is certainly a first step. If we don't do it, there may be another lawsuit. We're going to have to go to a certain form of districts that doesn't allow us to control what our government and what our system of government for Glendale looks like. And that is what I'm trying to avoid by preemptively going to the public, talking to them, proposing ideas. I've suggested 2, 6 districts, elected mayor every 2 years, 5 districts, 2 at-large council seats. I mean, there's a variety of ways of looking at it to try and do things better. And I know that there's agitation and trepidation, but we shouldn't let the unknown scare us from doing something that will secure a better and, I think, more democratic future for our entire city. I don't know if that has swayed any of my colleagues, but that's where I'll leave my comments this evening. Thank you for at least entertaining my idea and having it heard in this forum.
Of course. Thank you. Okay, so where are we?
Madam Mayor,
colleagues?
I appreciate
Yes.
Mr. Kasakian's concerns. It's just a matter of, for me, it's just a matter of, weight on both sides. I guess our option here is to just make a motion to note and file without giving any direction to staff. As with most decisions, I don't foreclose any other reconsideration in my process of analyzing it, but at this point, I would just say let's move to note and file.
Okay, is there a second on that one? Second. Vote, roll call, please.
Councilmember Abijanian?
Yes.
Brotman?
I can't hear you.
Councilmember Brotman?
No.
Kasakian?
I know staff did a good report, and I don't want to vote no as a statement as to what you brought forth. I'll respectfully abstain, which I know is the same thing as a no.
It's like I said, it's a, I'll make a comment after the vote, sorry.
Thank you.
Councilmember Najarian?
What happens if I abstain?
Um,
Counts as a no.
Counts as a no.
So I have to vote yes.
And Mayor Devine?
Yes. Note and file. So what was the vote? Councilman Najarian, we didn't hear your vote.
He voted yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. So it was, okay, 3-2. Okay, thank you.
3-1-1.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All of you, and Mr. Garcia, you had a comment?
I was just going to say, it truly is a philosophical and policy call, so that I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer. It's just how you each perceive the issue.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I thank my colleagues for all of your very thoughtful comments and suggestions, ideas, and I'm sure that eventually we will look into this again. Thank you very much. And what's next, please?
Next is oral communication. Discussion of limited items not a part of this agenda. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report. Madam Mayor, I do have a caller.
Thank you. Can we hear them, please?
Jennifer Pinkerton, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and city staff. I'm 11-year resident Glendale, member of the Sustainability Commission and of the Glendale Environmental Coalition. And I'm calling to offer general comments regarding the Grayson PR DEIR, as well as renewable energy. First, thank you for supporting the transition locally from a natural gas future to one based upon renewables. Second, very frightening to read recent reports that have come out, including one from the United Nations, that climate change impacts are accelerating faster than anticipated. So I'm calling because I believe it's imperative for Glendale to accelerate its renewable energy efforts as well. For example, it would be very helpful if negotiations for all renewables-related contracts could be wrapped up as soon as possible, even if that entails bringing in consultants to assist with that process. Next, it seems to me to be entirely feasible to install solar PV systems on many, if not most, city buildings within the next year. I think that's one of the best and fastest ways to get more renewable energy into our power mix. Lastly, although our current energy usage profile is that of a bedroom community, I hope that profile by itself does not preclude aggressive outreach to the commercial sector. And lastly, I thought bus stops were shelter and shade structures that bus stops are going to be discussed on the agenda, but just like to point out that each one of those bus stops is a potential candidate for solar power. Thank you very much. Good night.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mayor,
Thank
it
you.
looks like I have 2 more callers that came in.
Okay, before we take the next caller, I would like to ask City Manager, where are we with the contracts and the solar on city buildings?
Madam Mayor, members of City Council, staff from the City Attorney's Office and the Glendale Water and Power have been working feverishly on trying to complete these contracts. It's taken longer than we anticipated because of some of the changes that the vendor had requested that we didn't expect, and we have been going back and forth. We are at the end of, in our opinion, close to the end of having it completed. There are some legal languages that need to be ironed out between our attorneys and the vendor's attorneys, and hoping to wrap it up. And I know I've said this before, but hoping to wrap it up in the next couple of months.
And is this only one vendor that we're having an issue with?
One vendor in particular, yes.
Okay.
And that's the largest contract that we're working on.
Right. And is that impacting the solar on our city buildings as well?
No, that's a separate item of work that Mark Young, our new general manager, is working with his staff on it, and we should be able to submit a report to council in the next few weeks.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you. And that solar on the roof, the tops of those shelters is a good idea. But okay, let's take the next caller. Thank you, Mr. Galani.
Olivia Ramirez, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead, Olivia.
Hello, my name is Olivia Ramirez, and I have been a Glendale resident my whole life. In light of the recent IPCC report stating the urgent need for deep reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, I want to express my strong support for Glendale to replace all or at least the majority of Grayson gas generation units with clean energy alternatives. Growing up in Glendale, I've already experienced the adverse effects of climate change, from frequent droughts to increased wildfires. I know that Glendale can be a leader in sustainability and can be that leader by making Grayson a clean energy power plant. Thank you so much for your time and all the work you do.
Thank you, Olivia. Next caller.
Nicholas Franklin, you're live. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead, Nicholas.
Yes, I would like to express my appreciation for all the fine work that the City Council does in these very difficult days. Thank you so very much. I feel that we need to consider something very important. We need to begin a Persons with Disabilities Commission. So that the city would be better informed on the needs of persons with disabilities within our fine community. Because I think it is overlooked, unfortunately. So I hope that this can be considered in the very near future.
Nicholas, may I ask you if you would like, perhaps you can get in touch with me through our staff, and we can sit down and talk about some of your issues that you would like to see us focus on?
Yes, ma'am. I would really appreciate that because it really concerns me. This is not a complaint. This comment is meant to better identify the true needs of all persons with disabilities that have not yet been addressed.
Okay, I would like to speak with you with staff, and let's talk about that. And thank you very much for letting us know that you think we're doing a good job, because we've just kind of been we've been chastised a little bit this evening. So thank you very much for your comments. They will take your number, and we'll have staff get in touch with you.
May I please just say one more thing, and then I will disappear.
Of course.
When I've taken the bus, the MTA from Burbank to Glendale, when I sit at the bus stops in Burbank, it tells me the approximate time when the bus is going to arrive. I've never experienced this at any bus stops in Glendale. Could this also be addressed at some point?
Yes, I'm going to ask the city manager about that right after you hang up.
And I'm very happy to participate in any way that I can help.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Nick.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Nicholas. So, Mr. Galanian, I think that we looked at something like, don't we have? I thought we had something like that at our, or is that something in this? Councilmember Kasaki and you might have suggested that. Am I right?
I've asked why we don't have bus schedules at our bus stops for a long time. I mean, I myself have been caught at a bus stop on a Sunday trying to find the schedule, realizing that I had a different schedule than it has on other days. I think that we should put it up at every single bus stop should have at least a paper plexiglass schedule up, like other cities, like other civilized cities do. Thanks.
Yeah, but Mr. Galanian, haven't we seen that in our downtown? It seems like we had some sort of a walkabout, and one of the staff members was demonstrating to us how they could tell exactly how far away the bus was and what time it was going to be there. Is that anything that we're looking into in these shelters?
Madam Mayor, Member City Council, you are correct. We do use a software called NextBus, and and I understand not everyone carries a cell phone with them, but that's available via mobile devices. And we do have printed schedules on select number of shelters, but we will definitely look into expanding that program.
Okay, so it's very possible that Mr. Franklin doesn't have access to NextBus, but
right.
But anyway, thank you very much for that information, and I will look forward to the meeting with Mr. Franklin if we can arrange that. Is there another caller?
Madam Mayor, I do not have any callers.
Okay, then what's next?
Next would be new business and adjournment.
Do we have any? Okay.
Second.
Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Moved and seconded.
Second. Moved and seconded.
We are adjourned at 9:54. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.